Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, the Saturday edition. This is, if you are watching on YouTube, you'll see a little link. You can use that link to actually join us in Zoom to watch this. If you are here and you're a participant attendee, let me just give you a real quick tour if you're new to our little space. Uh, if you're an attendee and you see panelists, and you're wondering how the panelists became panelists. You think that they're saying things that are crazy and that you know better. Well, the only thing you have to do to join is make sure you have good internet, good video, good audio, and then you join early before 6:40. Now we open the doors at 6 o'clock in the morning. 6 o'clock, between 6 and 6:30. I'm not promising anything. It's an open conversation. It's what we call the original hour, which is what it started as us just kind of hanging out and talking. So from 6 to 6:30 we have that. From 6:30 to 6:40, somewhere in that range, we generally release the Discord link. The Discord link is where over 600 of us continue to talk about this stuff because 3 hours a day isn't enough. And then at 6:40, between 6:40 and 6:45, we start doing mic checks. That's when you have to be here to be part of this panel. So we're going to go through and check everybody's mics, just make sure that we have good audio and good video. So if you want to be on the panel, if you think you have something to add, we definitely want you to join. If you think that you know something that we don't, that what we're doing isn't the way it should be done, then join us, argue with us. That's what we want. That's what this panel's for. So to discuss things and to kind of churn through things and to figure those things out. So join us, but you got to be here by 6:40. At 7 o'clock, we do this little announcement, and then we're going to basically jump into the questions. The first hour is open questions, so it's whatever you ask about media production is game. The second hour is generally something that is specific. So on Fridays and Saturdays we have education. On Monday is a kind of an open. This Monday we're talking about Keynote, but it can be all kind. And the next week we're talking about AWS. And Monday's kind of the wild card. Tuesday is audio, Wednesday is cameras, Thursday is usually a special guest. On Friday and Saturday, as I said, was education. Saturday's the long day, so today we'll be talking about vMix at 9, Final Cut at 10, and Unreal Engine at 11. So that's kind of the basic flow of how this all this works, and we're going to get started. If you're listening to this inside of Zoom, we're posting the new Q&A system that we're going to be using, and so we're testing it right now and kind of making all that work there. So anyway, so let's see here. And do you guys, for those of you who have, do you see those now in your little view? Okay, great. And you see both of them? There should be two questions there. Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So I'm going to be managing the questions today because I'm working on some stuff in the back end to make all of this stuff work. And just so you know, when you see something disappear from the Q&A in the news system, it means that it's been promoted. It's now in the system. So that's what's happening there. So and we're working on ways to have you see that it's being promoted as opposed to just it disappearing, but we're still working on that. Jeffrey Reyes said, Alex, you've talked about how ring lights make great lighting for videos, but what is it about the circular shape that makes them good? Go ahead, Bill.
Well, there's a couple of things. So first of all, ring lights generally came out of the fashion industry. And when you put a ring light relatively close to somebody's face, and particularly if you shoot through the center of it, the angle of the photons hitting you come from every possible direction toward a face. So things like wrinkles, which can show in highlight and relief if they're lit from a particular direction, suddenly start to get fill in. So faces look better and better. So that was kind of why ring lights originally grew up. Just remember, though, no matter what ring light you buy and how big it is, the farther you put it away from you, the more it acts like a point source. So it's a combination. If you want the soft ring light effect, you've got to get one that's relatively large and get it close to the object you're trying to light.
Guy, did you want to add anything to that? He makes his own. So what would you say are the big advantages there? Or anything you want to add to what Bill said?
Bill said it perfect. I mean, it is that thing if you're getting basically like a top light or an underlight and two fill lights from the side. So it's a wonderful light as far as balance goes. So it really took off for us because of a beauty blogger. She came into our showroom and was asking, what light should I get? And she didn't have a whole lot of money at the time. So just this one light will do you great until you can evolve. And her audience just totally absorbed it. In fact, she had me on her show, and the whole lighting industry or YouTube industry kind of blew up around the ring light all from her, because she wound up having from 60,000 subscribers to like a couple million now. So her name is Judy. If you guys want to look it up, there's a cool video where I come onto her show and show the differences of the ring light with and without. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the ring lights have been for models and fashion, have been around for a long time, but they were big and cumbersome. When we were starting to do Hangouts long ago for Google had this thing called Hangouts that they had just started, and they were having trouble getting someone to stream it. So they hired us after a couple failures, and then we didn't fail on the first one, and then we did a lot of events. And so ring lights were always floating around our office as we did tests, because it was just a nice kind of even everything out. But back then in 2011, there just wasn't any good mounting setups. They were really built for photographers and for, it was just not built for what we needed. And this revolution that now that Guy's part of, that is just making all of these really much less expensive, the mounts internally. And it's become, it is the standard. If you look at behind the scenes for TikTok and many YouTubers, a ring light is just how they do it. So the other thing that's happened is fashionability of it. That little ring that you see as a reflection is not seen as a problem for most people, because they see it all the time. And remember that you don't have to put your camera in the center. You can just move it up and use it as a standard light, the way Guy's using it right now, right? Guy, yours is up a little bit. It's not a straight in shot.
Yeah, I can actually cut to, if you give me just a second, I can cut to kind of a behind the scenes shot. So it's kind of up to the side there. So I got the teleprompter there, and then I got a little Aperture MC. This is the little hue. But yeah, up to the side like that, and then that's my look.
And just such a nice big light. The big sources are really the key. And the ring light just happens to be a really easy way to do a big source. TJ?
Just for people who wear glasses, and if you want to put the ring around your lens, you have to be very careful, or you'll get a nice white circle in your eyes, and it doesn't look very good.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. All right. Our next question here. Michael Weber is asking, best Blackmagic camera for sports production. Was planning to purchase Ursa broadcast before the new release. Should I avoid the Super 35 due to potential low light issues and depth of field? Go ahead, Stuart.
Question to ask first is, how much motion is in the sports that he's filming? Because if it's fast motion sports like motorsports or a football where the camera is panning, which I know is different for Australian football compared to American football, anything with fast motion, you might want to look at the 4K version rather than the 4.6, just to go global shutter instead of rolling shutter.
And the 4K version is the older version, correct?
Yeah, the 4K version for the Blackmagic production cinema camera, the Ursa Mini, the original Ursa, the Scion that I have, and the Apetus Axiom all use the same Semosis 1200 sensor.
Right, and that's global. It's good, but you wanted to be looking for global versus, because go ahead.
Yeah, just the more motion there is, like especially if you've got a pan with a race car or an Australian rules footballer running, even somebody running past cricket posts, and all your background just falls over on rolling shutter.
Yeah, so it'll bend because what's happening is on rolling shutter, it's literally scanning, and it scans pretty quickly. We talked about it. We had someone from Blackmagic on, Bob from Blackmagic was on, and we talked about 12 milliseconds for the 12K, and it gets down to 7 or 8 milliseconds. But still, in 7 or 8 milliseconds, it's still enough that if you're moving really fast, from the time it gets from the top of the sensor to the bottom of the sensor is a different time, and so everything looks bent. And so you are looking for a global shutter when you're dealing with most sports or action scenes or other things like that. The global shutter is going to benefit you, in that process. And so definitely, consider that the rolling shutter is probably more important than many of the other issues that the light. You'll have better low light performance in the Super 35. On a long lens, depth of field is important. So we usually switch to 2/3 inch chips at about 75 feet. So, we will go we'll typically try, and it depends on the length of our lens and everything else. But at 75 feet, we find that in most lighting conditions, now sports is a little different because if you're outside, you can have a much smaller aperture, so you can get more depth of field. But it's hard to find lenses, that work on a Super 35 system after you get to about 75 feet. So we usually go down to 2/3 so that we can get into box lenses and so on and so forth. Go ahead, and Mickey, and then back to Stuart.
Yeah, a question. Do the Blackmagic cameras generally are they generally capable of outputting like 60p or 120p for slow-mo playback?
60p is pretty common for the Blackmagic cameras. I think all of them do 60p, but 120 is new to the. I think that there's some faster frame rates inside of some of the cinema cameras as well as the new 12K, but the 120 frame is not common yet, for that. I think we're going to get to a point pretty quickly that 120 is on almost every major production camera. I think that the world is moving to 120 frames, at least as an option. One of the reasons that 120 frames is interesting is that it gets to a point where 30, 24, 60 are all evenly divisible into 120. That's why that number becomes interesting, is because it's the first place that all of them line up. So that means your 24 frame a second is, fits into the 120, your 30, your 60. So you can capture that. And I think that what we're going to see more of is you're going to capture at 120, and then you can interpolate the motion blur from that 120 down to 24, 30, or 60. So it's going to let you multi-purpose that footage. So I think that I know where I'm looking at going, and where we're testing right now is, can we just go to 120 all the time? And then we just have that option to downsample to that. And the process of interpolating motion blur has been something that's been around for a long time. Go ahead, Mickey, and then back to Stuart.
Yeah, one thing I want to add is that you really want to consider as well the pedestal or the tripod head that you'd be using if you're going to do a lot of quick movements, like quick accurate movements.
Big heads are like on so we.
Yeah,
a lot
good
of times
O'Connors.
if I'm doing big, I a lot of times I'm using 2575s or the 2060s, that are big, much larger heads. What you're going to get is a heavier move, and you have a lot more control. Now these heads, I usually rent them. I owned a couple 1030s, but I don't buy anything that big. I usually just rent them because they're so cheap to rent and they're so expensive to buy. But those larger heads will make a difference in how smooth your motion is, and also how much weight you can put on it. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yep. How you mentioned light before, you can actually get for EF mount and PL mount, and I think Nikon's mount, a B4 to PL or B4 to EF mount. So you can put a broadcast camera lens. Just be aware you will lose 1 to 2, possibly even more stops of light, which if your camera is a little sensitive, it helps you to open the iris up a little bit there. The other thing with global shutter, when the camera's on your shoulder, you can move a lot faster than you can with a rolling shutter.
Yep, absolutely. Jesse?
So if you want 120 frames per second, the Blackmagic 6K will do it at 2.8K.
No, it's great. Yep, go ahead. And Mickey, last thing, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, that's when you're Jesse, when you're saying 120 or sorry, yeah, 120, is that the actual SDI out or is that just the internal recording?
Well, it's got HDMI out, not SDI. But the recording is at 120 frames per second, Apple ProRes.
Yeah, I don't know if it does it.
I don't know if the HDMI out, you'd have to have a capture card that could even process that. So, but yeah, I don't know if the monitor out does have that frame rate, but definitely the recording will do it at 2.8K.
Victor asks, can we talk about what kind of light we use to shoot light beams on the background, LICO or the kind of tapered directional light? Victor, can you talk to that a little bit more?
Absolutely, kind of hard to explain by words. You know how you sometimes see a beam of light that is, bouncing off the background literally a directional beam with a tapered edge. So
Mhm.
almost like you would see an effect in the theater or something
Yeah.
like that. That's what I'm talking about.
Bill, and then Mickey, and then Stuart.
So that is largely about a couple of things. Number one, almost everybody in the lighting industry has moved to these LED arrays. They are great for a lot of things. They're energy efficient, they run off batteries really well, but they do not cut well. And by cut, I mean, if you take a set of barn doors and close them down on an LED array, what you end up with is almost a Venetian blind kind of effect. Back in the day, we used tungsten. Those barn doors could be closed down and you would get that kind of shaping of the light that is kind of iconic from the whole era. So if you want to do that with an LED system, you need to have what's called a COB or a chip on board LED or some kind of Fresnel lens that focuses the light before you try to cut it. Without those things, you can't really achieve that with an LED panel.
Yep. Go ahead. Who was it? Mickey, and then Stuart.
Yeah, exactly. There are a bunch of LED lights now that have Fresnel lenses. The really popular one are the ARRI ones, and also to get those streaks of light, you do need that hard beam of light, but on top of it, you need to have haze. The light will interact with the haze, and that's how you get those streaks that you see on, like, if there's a scene in the cathedral and then there's streaks of light coming in through the windows. That's because of the haze and the hard light.
Time to buy a smoke machine, huh? Okay.
Yes, sir. And yeah, that's why, like, on stage you always see smoke machines, haze machines. Yeah, keep in mind smoke and haze are different things, but yeah,
Just
you see
barbecue
those
indoors.
on stage. Exactly.
Yep. Mickey, if I can follow that on with the haze, the other thing you're looking for is a device called a snoot. SNOOT. It's basically a tube that fits on the front of a Fresnel lens or a LED or anything, and it stops the light from spreading as it goes. It's basically circular barn doors that sits on the front of the light.
Yeah, Stuart, I remember doing this when I was in theater in high school,
Yeah.
and we used to use Lycos. That's how we did it. So maybe you
Yeah.
can get a good deal on those these days on eBay.
Well, they also offer LED lights now, so
And this
they're newer models.
I ran off because I realized I had one sitting here. This is a Nanlite. This is a Forza 60, so they're kind of their smallest version. And this is what we were talking about with the Fresnel on the front. And this is, if I pull it off, you'll see that it's not the array that we're used to. This is just a really, really bright single unit here. So, and a lot of people make this. This is the Nanlite version, aperture, ARRI, lots of different folks make different versions, of these. This is just a nice little small one that does a pretty good job. Go ahead, Bill. And then,
Just to add on top of that, if you really want a tight pattern and you want to shoot it through some kind of medium, smoke or haze, an ellipsoidal spotlight has a different kind of mirror and projects that kind of a beam that is very tight. And that combined with smoke will get you a really nice spotlighty type effect.
go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, not only the lights that have Fresnel LED lights that have Fresnel lenses, they're not the only ones who can create that sharp beam. High-powered panel lights, like, say, of course, this is quite like higher on the price range, but the sky panels at
Yep.
full brightness could push out a hard beam if you wanted to.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you don't
Dave,
put any of the modifiers in front of it.
right, Dave, and then George, and then we'll move on.
I think there's two different discussions here. One is beams through the air, which do require a medium like haze. If you're looking at what you're seeing behind me, I mean, this is the lighting filter in Affinity Photo, because this is a green screen behind me that's a brick.
Yeah,
but to get
Dave,
that
that's the
look-
kind of thing I'm looking at. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I can turn down the lights by switching to a different JPEG in my Blackmagic switcher. But the old school way to do it was to take a single light source. It can be just a bare light bulb, and you can get something called black wrap. It is black tinfoil, and you can form a slot or just cut a slot in it the size you want and stick it in front of it. And that's a super simple way to get that kind of slash or create a pattern to go over the light to only let the shape light you want. And then the nice thing about black wrap is you can just bend it and shape it to get the size you want. The key to that is, like I said, you want a single source. What Alex showed was a single LED in that fixture. You don't want a group of LEDs, because then you get a bunch of little lights going through that one slot.
George and then TJ, but 15 seconds each, real fast.
Aperture definitely right now is a good investment. I have a few of them. They've got a bunch of spotlight mounts and so forth that I've got installed. So that's a good way to go. Check it out, Victor.
Great. And TJ?
Don't forget, you can also go really old school and with just a hardware light.
There you go.
And you know, it's $5 at the hardware store and a light bulb, and you're covered.
Yeah, that's great. No,
You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Next question. Dave D. Miller said, if my microphone A to D has gain control, and since Zoom has gain control, I am wondering how to set each. Do I favor one over the other? And I think that we'll start with Mickey.
Yeah, I would set the level within Zoom at full, which is Unity, and do your changes at your earliest stage.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. I think we all agree there. All right. Next question. Christian Ortiz said, Alex, what is your approved shade of green color called material? So approved, I don't know if it's approved, but the one that I've used for the last probably nearly 30 years has been Composite Components. So it's digitalgreenscreen.com. And someone can put it in the chat, but the digitalgreenscreen.com composite components, and I use specifically the indoor version. There's an indoor and an outdoor version. The outdoor is a little darker. There's a couple things about it. They make paint as well, so I use their paint. I use their Lycra. They're the only green screen that I've found that I can't find many other ones that do green screen Lycra. And green screen Leica is kind of the key to the operation. So the reason is that you can stretch it into a frame. And when I say a frame, you don't have to spend too much on the frame. The frame, I used PVC pipe for the first 5 years. You just go to a PVC pipe. I'd cut it into like 4-foot chunks or whatever so that I could pack it. And then I just put little, and I just pull out a frame with it. And I might even be able to find a photo of it, but I think that but that digital green screen it keys really, really well, and you can stretch it, and then you spray water on it, come back in a couple hours, and all the wrinkles are gone. And it's just really hard to get cloth to be perfectly smooth and nice and taut. When you try to pull cloth taut, you end up with all these little folds and just little idiosyncrasies. And so to get that nice, like just completely flat green, I find that that one's the best. And because it's Lycra, you can throw it over things, and you have bigger, you can do a lot of kind of custom stuff. We've cut pieces up and put them on top of things, but it's definitely been what we've used for a long time. And I buy other things that are cheaper. It is not the cheapest solution. It's like $400 for a 9x9 or something like that. But I value my time a lot. So, and so the quality of my key and the speed at which I can key is much higher. And that becomes the most important thing generally for me. And so I haven't found anything that makes me faster or produces better delivery than the digital green screen. And I'll try to get Jonathan, the founder of Digital Green Screen is Jonathan Erlin. And I'll talk to him and find out if he's willing to come on and chat with us about his green screens, because he's been doing research in this for a lot longer than me. I got into it when he was already 30 years into it. So he's been doing it for a long time. Matt Cool said, I'm thinking of getting a new 4K camera for live events using SDI and corporate video production. Any thoughts on the Panasonic CX350, good or bad? Does anyone have any thoughts on the Panasonic? Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I think it's a good overall camera. Back in the olden days, we had the Canon GL1 form factor, and it's that same form factor. We get the rocker style zoom. It has a nice chip on it, but I mean, the look that you can get out of a Pocket 4K or Pocket 6K, depending on what your workflow is in editing, I'd probably go that route. If you have a local reseller.
What's the price on the CX350?
It's like $3,700.
Right.
So the reason why I would get that camera if I was doing a lot of events is that it does have NDI HX out. I tested it. It doesn't. It's not like full. So there's a difference between full NDI and NDI HX, and so it's a compressed version, and it just doesn't have that same crisp color. It doesn't have the color fidelity. It's like smashed, so you're throwing away like a bunch of your data. But overall, I mean, it's a decent camera for an all-around corporate style. If you're just like running and gunning, shooting all the time, I love having that 20x range for zoom, so I can with one lens I can get in. It's hard to do that on a DSLR type. In fact, I just put in an order to get a Fujinon lens that'll do it, and it was like $10,000. So there's a place for every camera, and that one falls right in line for certain people to be the ideal choice.
Stuart, and then Jeff.
I mentioned NDI HX, and on those cameras, try to avoid HX. It's unreliable. It's horrid. It is, in Alex's words, a dumpster fire. But
Makes
one
you
thing
green.
Guy did mention about the NDI that I kind of spotted in some of the press releases that came out through Red Shark and what have you, it may only do NDI through a Panasonic switcher. I haven't been able to find any information saying it will do it through OBS or vMix yet.
No, it will. It will. I tested it. It works fine.
Brilliant. Even better.
Jeff.
No, I'll move on. Sorry.
Okay. Robert Green, what are you sitting on for these long Zoom chats? I love Herman Miller, but way too expensive. Go ahead, TJ.
I'm sitting on a Herman Miller Aeron chair. Herman Miller chairs are expensive, but they are built to last. I have one that is 18 years old, looks like brand new. And look for used. If you're looking for Herman Miller chairs, there's used ones all over the place.
There's someone closed in the building that I'm in, and I went into they said, take whatever you want. I went in, are we allowed to take those chairs? And 2 Herman Miller chairs. I was like, they were like, oh yeah, just go ahead and take them. I was like, okay. I have this little guy fixes a lot of chairs. This is the Comfy Life. It's got like a goo in the center that I bought a while ago, and it really makes I got a better chair with a thicker thing because I'm on this thing like 8 hours a day. I try to take breaks pretty often, but a nice thick cushion makes a difference. But you can add a cushion to what you're doing, and it literally was transformative for me, for my back and for everything else. Just having a big thick something with a gel kind of in it definitely makes a big difference. I know this is a little odd for media, but a lot of us are spending a lot of time sitting in these meetings, and it does make a difference. Because I was getting to a point where every time I got up, I was like, oh, I'm getting old, and now I don't have that. Dave, and then TJ, and then George, but keep it 15 seconds each. We're gonna have to speed up.
Yeah, I'll do a quick pitch to cozyroadie.com for their technician chairs that fold up and go into road cases. I bought 6 of them for all my friends.
What?
They go in
Cozy
SKP.
Roadie?
Link
Yeah,
time.
they're on sale right now for like $500, but they are so worth it. They're super comfortable.
And they
And
fold up.
when I get a crappy chair on a job site, I'll take the foam out of the top of a Pelican sometimes and just put that in the seat of the chair.
You know, it's funny. Well, what I'm excited about there is that we do, like it sounds you do. We bring our own chairs. So like when we go to events for our crew, we've stopped because otherwise you don't know if you're going to end up with folding chairs for 3 days, 12-hour days. That's not fair. You know, for your it reduces your operational integrity is how we usually say it, is that people are uncomfortable and they're frustrated and they make mistakes when they do that. So so we'll bring like literally, you'll see us, the truck will come in, it'll unload all these big cases, and then there's like 15 chairs, you know, that all come, and people look at you like you're odd, but then we put our logo on the back of them and everything else. But the idea that we could fold them up and put them into the truck would be so much more convenient. I'm pretty excited about that. TJ.
I upgraded all my friends to those. I called them my first class upgrade, to the job site.
I'm going to definitely check those out. TJ.
Don't discount an expensive chair. A bad chair is like a bad pair of shoes. It'll wreck your day. It'll wreck your back. It'll ruin your life if you're sitting on a lousy, cheap chair many hours in a day.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, next question. Gabriel says, how does Mickey cut office hours so efficiently? Does he pin spotlight panel in the attendee's view? What are the shortcuts? Nikki, let's spend just a couple minutes talking about your process again. Are you there, Mickey?
Hello.
There we
Can
go.
you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I lost. I nudged my MixPrease USB connection and I lost audio. Sorry. What is the question?
It's just if you it's how do you approach editing the show? What are the key pieces of when you're
Oh
cutting the
yeah.
show?
So yeah, majority of the time I'm in this view, which is the active speaker view. And then when there's quick back and forth or a lot of people are like we're jumping from one person to another really quickly, then I go to the gallery view, which is on a Mac, the shortcut is Command Shift W. And then I keep an eye out for people who may be screen scraping things like sharing web pages or stuff like that. And then I spotlight them so everyone can see. Like say like earlier we were talking about those roadie chairs or whatever it was called. So I shared Jeffrey Powers who was showing the website on his video.
That's great. Robert Pearson says, what is the best app on the Mac to use when testing a camera offline? He's testing the Logitech C920. Go ahead, Bill.
Oh gosh, I forgot the name of it. There's an internal Mac app.
It's called
QuickTime.
Called QuickTime.
No. There's it's the crazy one.
Photo booth.
Photo booth.
You can do photo booth, but always remember that QuickTime will just see any camera that you have coming in.
So either of those.
Photo booth has extra things in it. It's the but yeah, QuickTime will, you just say it's like make movie or whatever, and it'll just, what are your cameras, and you can grab onto it. I use that to test my audio. I use it to test my video. For that. But yeah, it's but photo booth as built will work exactly the same way. Same engine, same process. Jeffrey, go ahead real quick, and then we'll move on. And Philip.
Really, Zoom and Skype both have the ability to bring it back to you. So you just go into the settings and go to the audio video and test it out that way before you get on a call.
I do it a lot because a lot of my systems break each other. So if I'm using BlueJeans or Hangouts or Meet or whatever, I have to make sure that something hasn't taken over, because you got to use Mimo Live with BlueJeans and Meet to feed the camera back from what I'm using right now. And so I have to kind of do that. So I just open up a meeting real quickly, and usually before I jump into a Zoom now, I always jump into my own personal meeting just to see what my video looks like. It's less of whether the camera works and more of whether Zoom is seeing and hearing my audio and video. Philip, you were going to say something?
Tangentially, will QuickTime 7 player ever come back, or its capabilities?
No, it's done. Well, I mean, if you have a 32-bit, if you're still in Mojave, it'll work fine. But otherwise, you can. There is a hack that you can do that will reinvigorate 32-bit apps. I can't think of what it is right now, but you can run it, and and it will no, it's not Rosetta. It's like it'll unlock the 32-bit stuff again, so that it does work, but it's a little unstable. Is
there a replacement for QuickTime 7? Because I find there's a lot of things that QuickTime now is converting, and
the closest to it is Switch. Telestream's Switch is probably the closest to the feature set that you saw with QuickTime 7. You can cut files, you can add stuff, move it around, I think they're I don't think anybody else has put it's not the same. There's things that you could still only do in QuickTime 7, really arcane things that you could do with QuickTime 7 that you can't do anywhere else, which is why I still have a Mojave machine, just that and Mac captions or whatever. But Telestream Switch is probably the closest to the functionality that we remember in QuickTime 7.
How do you feel about VLC?
VLC is great. It just doesn't have the same functionality as QuickTime 7 or I mean, I have VLC and I use it all the time. So it's a must-have app. I mean, it's free, I think. I don't know if there's anything. I've never paid for it.
Yeah, correct.
So VLC is a great app that you should have on your computer, as everybody should have that, because there's a lot of things you can just play. You can put links in. You can do all kinds of other things that are great. But the functionality that we're looking for as far as editing and changing things and really getting into things with like one of the nice things about Switch is you have an H.264 file. You can cut it and just save it out. You're not recompressing it. You can just cut head, boom, boom, and then save it without having to recompress it, which is what
brilliant.
Yeah, when we're doing like fast turns, it works well. I mean,
Also,
we're moving to, I think that we're going to end up, we're researching right now using, apps like Blackbird or on air things like Blackbird. But before that, We're kind of still working on fast. Blackbird kind of changes all the fast turn stuff because it's just in the cloud, and you cut you 5 seconds after your event starts, you can start editing. And so in the cloud.
And Handbrake, is that too old? Old school?
No, Handbrake's great. You just that's just conversion, but again, it doesn't do what QuickTime does. Leland and then Bill, and then we're going to move on really fast. We're going to start accelerating.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the fact that most of the stuff that we use webcams and stuff on as far as the testing goes, webrtc.org has an actual testing link that'll test your camera, your microphone, your internet connection, your throughput, and everything. So go to test.webrtc.org. and you'll be able to access this for free of charge. You just start the button and it'll go through your system and run through each system check. Just make sure you're not using your microphone or your webcam on another software system at the time you're on the test.
Yep. Bill, go ahead, 15 seconds.
Just really quickly, if you have VLC and Handbrake, I think you can play back about 99.9% of the content you'll ever run across.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Timothy asks, Timothy McCain said, I get a lot of glare reflection on my glasses from my lights. Anything I can do to replace that? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, there's two things. The first thing is that just the geometry, depending on how big a correction there are, if you just lift the stems up a little bit, sometimes that's enough to kill reflections coming out. You can also, if your mall is open and there's any kind of optical shop in there, you can often go in and for like $10, they'll put an anti-reflective coating on somebody's glasses, and it usually can do it in a day. I don't know if that's still around, but that used to be my go-to.
Andrew and then TJ.
Oh, it's the same thing, just to tilt your glasses forward.
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
And the other thing you can do is actually move your lights up a little bit.
Yep.
You may only need to move them 2 or 3 inches to fix the problem.
Yeah. If you look at mine, there's nothing. I'm not doing anything special other than my lights are at an angle that makes sense for for this. But I definitely take that into account when we're trying to light somebody with glasses like myself. Figuring out where that position is for the light to make that work is useful.
Now,
or get contact lenses.
Yeah.
As executives are shooting right into their screen, I'm getting a lot of reflection from the monitor right into their glasses that I can't affect because the monitor is the camera.
Well,
so how can you help me?
It's the power. It comes down to the power of the lights that you're using to light the rest of them. So the more power the screen is even. So as you increase the power of you don't see much of the reflection here. Number one is have their screen in dark mode. And have so you definitely want your screen, you want your, whatever you're doing, get it into dark mode.
Yeah.
If they're reading off of text, flip it. But look for reducing the number of white things and bright things on their screen is definitely going to make a huge difference. That's number one. And number two is you increase the amount of light that you're lighting them with. Now that and it bothers them when it's a point source. When you get a really big soft light and you get it up there, a lot of times you can put a lot of power in there and they're not going to notice it. But as you increase that becomes a bigger contributor to what's there in front of them than the screen. So if you combine dark mode with a lot of light.
I'm dealing with tech civilians, not video people. These are people calling in on various communications.
Well, if they're again for us, if they're executives, we're sending them things to put up. So like like if they're really executives, that we have some time to plan, we send it to them, and if not, we send them a lesson, which is like, hey, if you had video, this would look a lot better if you had a light. And so
Yeah.
You can't when clients turn us down, we make suggestions, and when clients turn it down, we just use it. That's that may not be the production that we want, but it's a great lesson, and the next time that they'll do it, and so and again, the other thing is that someone who listens to us, we help them a lot. Make sure that they look and sound good, and then people are like, well, why did that person sound much better than this person? And you said, well, because that person bought this, or we sent a kit to them and we didn't do it with that one, and then they quickly get that they want to do it, and we find most of our clients will immediately switch to budgeting for $700 kits that they just send out that are all the basic things that they need, and it looks and sounds good, but there's that whole equation that I've talked about in the past, which is action occurs when possibility is greater than circumstance. When they don't know what the possibility of it is, then circumstance is higher than possibility. As soon as they see it, then possibility becomes higher than circumstance, and they solve it. Jeffrey, 15 seconds. We're going to move on.
For Sky, the other thing is a privacy filter or polarized sheet that you can put over the screen.
Okay, and now we're gonna start moving really fast. So when I come to you, all the answers should be 15 seconds. We're gonna speed round here. Timothy also says, when I record a conversation in Zoom and record audio separately for better quality, I get sync issues. I can sync the audio at the beginning, but at the end it's off by many seconds. What's causing that? And most likely that's a drop frame, non-drop frame, time code issue. Is typically the problem, is that the video is being, and the other problem you're going to end up with is that video records from software, especially from Zoom, are going to vary in frame rate, and that's going to cause a bunch of issues. But it's probably sitting at 30p and your audio is sitting at 20. The way the audio works is going to be off there. I will answer it really quickly and then see if anyone changes it. But what I do oftentimes is I scale the audio at the far end of the event so that it syncs, and you'll find that it generally will sync all the way through, or be as close as you're going to get. So rather than chopping it up and trying to realign it, get to the far end, separate, you have the audio separate, grab it and start scaling your audio in until it perfectly syncs at the end. In fact, on some of the events when I know that that's going to be a problem, I've slated it, just do a slate real quick on the front and the back. Or something that's a definitive noise, and then that allows me to resync the audio for that if it's slipping at a regular rate. Bill and then Philip.
Just always make sure that all the cameras recording have the audio rate sent to 48 kilohertz. The biggest drift problem is mismatched sample rate.
Okay, go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, and if you don't know, if you use the app Plural Eyes, 2 words, Plural Eyes, UIES, Red Giant software, I think it is, that actually will it'll sync 2 sources of audio, and it will adjust for slip.
There's also I can't think of the sound devices. There's a free sound devices app, and I just can't think of it off the top of my head, that will convert 44 to 48.
I don't know if it does conversion, but the app is probably Wave Agent.
And I think it does. I think it does convert from 44 to 48 and vice versa. Jeff?
I'm wondering whether this is the Zoom recording he's talking about. So we could scrape the screen and do a actual video recording of it. That would probably, he may be getting sync issues just because of the buffering in Zoom.
It can be. Also, if it's sliding back and forth, if it's a regular thing, then it could be a sample rate issue.
In addition to Pluralize, that's actually built into Final Cut Pro. You could take your video file with audio and your good clean audio and do a multicam synchronization, and that'll do the same function as Pluralize. It'll stretch the audio to match.
They actually have a special thing called a sync clip, which is designed for exactly that in Final Cut 10.
That's great.
Also, Avid also has it built in.
That's great. Sky, real quick.
Screen scrape. I just discovered that the new QuickTime will also do that and does some amazing new things too. So things I learned.
We're gonna have to move really fast now, so this is gonna be super fast here. Again, remember, as you're watching, your vote matters. So we may not get to everything, but what we're prioritizing, what we're answering next, and what gets left on the ground at the end of the day depends on how everyone who's watching votes on things. So because we're just going through it at the how it's ranked by the viewers. Gabriel said, "What are your thoughts on considering the ATEM Production 4K?" The non-ME model, apart from additional SDI ins and aux outputs? It looks like the ATEM minis can get the job done with less cost with DVE. So I mean, it depends on what you're going to do. The minis, of course, are going to be HDMI only. There's a lot more. I think you have 2 downstream keys. You have more inputs, a bigger interface. It's going to be a lot easier to get around if you have more inputs. I think there's a bunch of different value propositions to do that. Go ahead, Guy.
The big thing is that it's 4K. So I owned this panel before, and that's one thing that I miss. As we're doing these smaller things like video conferencing and stuff, the ATEM Mini is fabulous. I mean, for the money, it's just incredible what it does. But I do miss when I actually go to do something that I want to record and upload to YouTube or do some kind of tutorial, the 4K, and then the aux output, being able to route one of your inputs to a confidence monitor at a stage or something like that. It's really nice. And then having all SDI, of course. So there's a lot more to it than just some of the basic stuff that you see. Then there's comms, and it actually has a real headphone out. So sorry, that was longer than 15 seconds.
Yeah, lot of extra features there. Dave, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I used the 4K for the first 3 weeks on office hours, and now I'm using the little rack mount TV studio. The rack mount TV studio does not have the advanced chroma keyer like the ATEM Mini and the 4K did. So my key took a little more work, but it does have XLR in, so that's how I'm getting my audio in.
Yep, and it's definitely next generation versus last generation. The minis tell us that they're going to put all the new mixers or switchers as they come out will have the advanced keyer, which is significantly better. Gabriel also asked, I'm live streaming to Facebook with OBS from a 2018 15-inch Pro. Notice that my audio drifts over time. My initial stream started at 60 milliseconds delay to sync up with the video. By the end of the stream, I had to increase to 200 milliseconds. All I'm going to say is welcome to software streaming. Sorry, not that I'm bitter. Anyway, so Jeff, go ahead, 15 seconds, and then Jeff Reed, 15 seconds.
Sky, didn't you have a similar problem at your church? And did you find a solution?
And I still do, and no, I don't. I do have an ATEM Mini question, but we're in rapid speed mode, so I do have a problem. I'd love some help. We'll talk later.
Okay, yeah, that's Jeffrey.
That is more of a Facebook issue than it is an OBS issue ever since they switched their newer studio version.
Yeah, but we don't. I mean, we stream a lot of stuff to Facebook, and we don't see that drift out of Elementals. So you know, so our Elemental streaming to Facebook, we're not seeing a drift over time. So it may be interaction between the software streaming and the new studio, but it's not. It's an interaction there, but it's not happening with hardware encoders. So you know, there's something there that's going on.
I'll test that then.
Yeah.
I just want to mention something that happened in a stream we did last night, Alex, because we ran into a similar situation. Yep. We were streaming from OBS to Dacast and also from vMix to Facebook, and the Facebook feed slowed down by almost a minute before the production was over. So we're not sure where that no sync issue took place between audio and video, but the transportation of the video took longer, which I'm kind of surprised about. So we're going to look into it.
To your point and to Jeffrey's point, I will say that I believe that Facebook is adding too much stuff to their producer system. This is part of the whatever the graphics stuff that they're trying to add and all the audience interaction stuff that they're putting on the platform. And I think that it's probably going to become worse. so you know, I don't think that. I think that it's I think that they've dumped too much into that. Alan Scott said, I have an old iMac. What is the minimum software chain to allow some audio EQ of my signal into Zoom? Anyone got a really fast answer there? Go ahead, Bill.
Would that be an audio hijack? I mean, I can't. That's the one thing that kind of works everywhere. Hard, I think, or complicated.
It's very light. It's easy, and it'll probably do it at $60 or whatever. I would recommend going ahead and buy. If you're wondering, should I get Loopback with it as the bundle? The answer is yes. They should be one app. It feels like they should be one app. It's crazy that they're not one app, but you should just buy them as one app and just assume that one app is a little bit more expensive. You'll find that you run into little weird things without it. Tom Garello said, are OBS and ScreenFlow comparable? How would you guys? I don't think that they're really the same. You know, OBS is really more of a live broadcast tool, and ScreenFlow is a a streaming cutting tool. I think that they're different. Yeah, I would say that they're not comparable. Frank Henny said, is there a modern replacement for MPEG Streamclip for the Mac? I don't know if there's a modern replacement. I don't even know what it is.
MPEG Streamclip is great stuff. I use it all the time for transcoding video. For example, when you get video clips from people taken on iPhones, they have weird alignment issues, and sometimes they're switched by.
Yeah, we got to go to a whole bunch of questions.
Anyway, yeah, it's good stuff, and I've not found a modern replacement. You should check it out if you haven't used it. It comes in very handy.
Bill, quick.
It's a Pure with Handbrake, same kind of software.
Almost.
Oh, got it. Okay. A Mitchell said, can there at least be a delete option for one's own posts, since editing is unlikely to be a feature, and it would be good to be able to fix a question that way without manipulating the voting or reporting features. Yeah, I think we can take a look at that. Being able to delete your own seems to make sense. So we'll put that in the list. Christian Oliver said, if I understand correctly, your goal is to spread the good word worldwide. Will you consider franchise the office hours for other language groups with the kind of shared knowledge and best practices? I would love to franchise office hours. All you have to do is call it office hours and then do it in another language. So, I don't speak any other languages. So, one of the things that, so I'm like, other people have already started using this model for other things. They find this to be useful. They're using it for other things. And then I every once in a while I get a text back of going, I hope it's okay that I'm using your format. Yes, that's the point. So if you're wondering, the point is that, if you like this format, use it. So I don't have any, I don't own anything related to this. I'm just trying to produce a good example. And I'm fortunate enough that a bunch of great people have shown up to play. So, I'm please steal whatever you see, that you like here as we work on this stuff. And we're hoping
Chris
to give
Clark
you more
said he's
tools
going to use the office hours name. He said that yesterday. So, or it is office hours,
which is funny because I got office hours from, of course, schools. So that would be, that's the, there's that was the concept when we started it. I didn't expect it to last so long or become like the name. It was just kind of like, no, I'll just open it up and call it this. And of course that was decided in like 10 seconds. I will say that one of the things we do want to do, mostly because I just want to figure it out, is that we want to, or I want to, we're going to start doing the captioning. I'm going to get the Rev thing to try that just so we can see how captioning works inside of this from an accessibility perspective. And B, I do want to figure out if there's people that are interested in doing this, of possibly doing translations. There's some interpretation tools inside of office hours that you can kind of select audio. So, there's a possibility that we could have people interpreting multiple languages, into this so that you could listen to it. It hasn't really gotten to that size yet where I'm ready to do that, but I think that there's an opportunity where we can have it in 2 or 3 or 4 languages, down the road, which would be a lot of fun. A. Mitchell said, how do we see the timestamps for the chat messages in the new parallel chat system? Is there a command key sequence? I admit that there is, but I can't remember what it is. So I will, I'll ask Chris and we'll post it tomorrow.
Yeah, fuzzy time is cute, but it helps to have an actual timestamp, even if it's just hover text or something. That's what you do is hover text over the fuzzy timestamp.
We did something, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway, we're gonna go a little heavy because we started a little late, but we'll be into education here in just a second. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna answer a bunch of these really quickly, or we're gonna try to answer them. We're in a crazy speed round. If I come to you, it's like 5 seconds. Just your and we'll do like one person. Greg Gibson says, what's the optimal bit rate for streaming to YouTube, Facebook, in terms of quality and engagement? When do you reach overkill? I'm just going to answer that one. It's 4 megabits a second, 6 megabits if it's 1080p, and 60 frames a second is a waste of time unless you're doing sports or esports. Any thoughts on the functionality of Alpha Layer in Panimation Telestrator working with the ATEMs? Unless someone has their hand raised, I'm just going to be answering these really quickly. You don't need the alpha channel. Use a black and white image of the output as the key, and then fill it with a color inside of the ATEM, and it'll work fine. Larry Tang said, having a problem losing the image on HDMI computer monitors, does the EDID get stripped when I convert the HDMI to SDI, or do you have any suggestions to strip EDID so that these consumer flat screens don't lose signal? I don't have any strong answer for that. I don't think anybody else does. So I'm sorry about that for that. Is it possible to give text size options for users? Yeah, we're working on that. Greg Gibson said, when streaming to YouTube or Facebook, I'm trying to determine optimal bit rate. Oh, I think we just had that one. And we got another one that's the same thing. Greg, I don't know how that got copied so many times. Dave Miller said, if my microphone's A to D gain control, I think we got to that So I think we're now, yeah, I'm going to delete the rest of these. I think we answered all of these. If I didn't, we'll answer them tomorrow. So so anyway, so we kind of burned through that real quickly. I try to answer all the questions, and I admit we just kind of muscled through that. So if you're interested now in the education of joining as panelists, we're making an exception to our normal rule, and we're letting raise your hand, your Zoom hand, if you're an educator and you want to be in the panel. All right, Chris and John Idelson. And we'll do a quick mic check with you before we get started. Anyone else? Anyone? Bueller?
Alex, I'm going to have to bail out for just a few minutes before the presentation at noon, so I might disappear for a moment, but I'll need back in.
All good. Bueller? Anyone? All right. I felt like that was so apropos for our little education section. It's
Alex,
great movie.
Yeah. Well,
Alex, you brought up before about using a head like heavier heads, but you weren't really clear about it. So would you use Millers with 100 mil bowls and stuff for that, or what?
Well, so the big thing with larger heads is being able. This is tripod heads, is what we're talking about. Is that you have a lot more control over the tension and the weight of the head versus the weight of the camera. Allows you to basically have much smoother moves. You can really set that tension up. You don't want it to be totally loose, and you don't want any play. When you have play in the head, it'll shake a little bit, or you'll see this little jerk as you start your pan. So when you have a little bit of tension in the tripod head, both in the pan and the tilt, it means that the operator doesn't want to work too hard, but you want to work a little against that head so that you get this nice smooth. That's what creates a nice smooth head from a fluid head, is having enough. And the other thing is that you never want to go over the weight that is set. You can put things that are heavier than the head on it. But if you put too much weight on it, it does two things. One is it's hard to balance it, and you should always balance your head, which means you turn all the tension off and you move your camera forward and back until it just sits on its own, and then you tighten its plate, and then you can tighten it up because when you do that, it's going to perform much better. It puts a lot less pressure on the head as well. Putting a lot of weight, more weight than the head is spec'd for, will cause it to bleed. Which what I literally mean is that the fluid in the fluid head will start coming out of it eventually if you constantly are putting things on. And I only know that because Ace tripods cannot handle 24-inch teleprompters. All right, so we're going to shift gears. We are now going to talk about education. So, and we're going to post it in here. If you're just joining for the education hour, please, we're posting a link into the chat that is for the new Q&A system that we're building. So if you're in here and if you're as a panelist, you do have to watch the next thing that I'm going to give you, which is the where the questions will pop up for you to view them. So in the chat, I know this is going to be confusing. If you're a panelist in the Zoom chat, you'll see a link that's for full screen, and that you'll see some questions coming up. But if you're an attendee, please use the link that we have there. That is the Makana office hours. And so what we want to do is we're testing this. We'll talk about it tomorrow as far as feedback goes. You can put feedback in the chat. We'll be reviewing that later. So we're trying to make it better and faster every day, and we need your input to do that. So let's do a quick mic check with John and then Chris. Go ahead, John.
Caught me adjusting my green screen. This is a test from beautiful Monterey Bay. Happy Saturday.
Looks and sounds good. Go ahead, Chris.
Good morning from rainy Tempe, Arizona. We love it. It's like ecotourism.
There you go. Very good. All right. So if you have questions, we're experimenting with the idea that we can do 2 hours of a week of Q&A. Right now, there's only one question in the new question system. So if you're asking questions there, please ask the questions in the new system. We have a link in the chat. We only have one question, so we're either going to talk about this question for a long time, or we're going to talk about other things as we move forward as the panel. So as you get started as the attendees, we just want you to know that it's your job to ask questions. We can't, we as panelists, our job is to discuss these questions, but as attendees, we don't want a bunch of lollygaggers in there just listening and not being contributing to the conversation. This is a different kind of show. It's a show that we create, and we create the panel creates the audio and video discussion, but the attendees create the questions. So there's 196 people here. There's not 196 questions or 196 votes. So, chop, chop, let's go have some, think about the questions that you may have. So, and we will come for the panelists, start thinking about things. If the attendees don't pick up the pace, then the panelists will fill in. So, anyway, so let me move a couple of these questions over. If you see the questions disappearing, it does not mean that I got rid of them. It means I moved them into a system where we can all see them. We're going to work on a way that you can see that, but we're still in that process. So Jeffrey said, Alex, for teachers, you mentioned how it's important to look at the camera for student engagement. A teleprompter could be helpful for this. Can you use a teleprompter with a webcam like a C920 or a Brio? Absolutely. Now, does anyone want to jump in? Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I've been working on the teleprompter I have here, and I've been having trouble with the flat screens to go underneath it. Yes, obviously you can use an iPad or an iPhone or things like that, and those will work fine. But I've been trying to get a slightly larger panel that I can use to get the text size up a little bit. And I'm having all sorts of difficulty. I've had 3 of them come in so far. 2 of them, when hooked up to the HDMI output, simply gave me a green screen with nothing else. So I think there's some sort of mismatch between feeding flat panels that are very inexpensive with a standard video signal that you have to be watching out for.
Well, it depends on whether you're doing if you're doing text or not. We're not using text. We use the teleprompters mostly so that we see people right in front of us, as we're doing it. And so then you want a cheaper one because you just want it to be HDMI. You just want to put it up there. You don't want it to do anything, crazy with the thing. I'm going to show you a prototype that we built 8 years ago. This is very old. This was one of the early ones, but it'll give you an idea of how we approached basically a webcam with a teleprompter. So it'll be a rough screen share here. Let's see. So this is a prototype that we were building long ago. I think this is from June, so almost 8 years ago, almost exactly. So it wasn't the final version, but because it's opened, I can kind of show you what that looks like. So this is silvered plastic, I think. I think this was like $10 of silvered screen. Marty Brennis actually built this, by the way. And so you have this metal here is called 80/20. If you've never seen 80/20, it is the erector set for adults. So anyway, so it is the most amazing thing ever. And there is a 80/20 catalog that I like a lot. Anyway,
it's worth pointing out that 80/20 is a brand name.
It is. It's extruded aluminum, and it has lots of grooves and lots of things that you can do. So you can have these little things where we're putting these baby pins in. We have, it's like a little erector set with a little chop saw, in my opinion, and some of this extruded aluminum that you can build anything that you're thinking about. Desks, we build all of our control rooms with it, but we also, when we're prototyping, this is not necessarily how we would send it to the client, but when we're prototyping, it's an amazing thing. So we've got, in this case, we had a Mac Mini kind of underneath this. We've got a monitor. We've got this. What really makes the webcams work is something like this. This is a Noga arm, but you can buy cheap, newer ones on Amazon for $10. What you want to be looking for here, now this is actually before the 920 existed. So this is a 910 and we clamped it, but you can have a 920. And then what you're looking for is any camera that you get that's a web camera. What you're looking for is a 1/4-20 mount, standard tripod mount, screw mount that you have there. So you have this all set up here, and then what this allows you to do is kind of move it up and down, so that you can get it to where you want it. We played with this. I mean, obviously, this was just literally us just throwing ideas against the wall, and to figure out what that looks like. Go ahead, Colin. You were going to say something.
I was going to say that I was just trying to find the link actually to the portable monitor that I bought about $200 on Amazon. It doesn't have a brand name, which doesn't speak well for it. But take standard HDMI input, it may resolve Bill's problem.
And then
I was going to suggest taking a look at telepromptermirror.com as a set of resources for teleprompter glass of various thicknesses and any delineation you want, as well as some software that might help you out and some general.
I just posted on Amazon that they're selling the 24-inch Fire TV for $99 right now.
And the just to know that almost any major city will have somewhere that has silvered glass because it's used for security and so on and so forth. So on the cheap,
I mean, you can buy it. You can buy it at Home Depot, but if you don't want to go and look at dig into the specifications, you want it all in one place. Teleprompter mirror.
Absolutely.
At least tell you the information you need to seek when you go to Home Depot.
Yep, and usually the question is like 60-40 versus 70-30 is usually the that's the argument of what you make your glass. Go ahead, and 70-30 is the best one. Michael and then John.
Yeah, I just got as another alternative. I've got a little USB monitor that I'm looking at straight now, but it's similar to setup to what you've got in your room or what you had. So that might be another alternative as well.
Yeah, and then John Edelson.
I put in a chat. We did this actually with a middle school. It's used for old CD cases. If any of you have them, it made a cute little teleprompter.
That's funny.
It really worked.
Funny. That's great. I'm going to share the screen one more time to show you a front end, the kind of what this looked like again in prototype phase. So this is what we had built here. You can see we had in this back when we had AJA IOXTs, and you've got a little Mac Mini, and you can see the teleprompter popping up here. Of course, the other part of a teleprompter is getting something over it to make sure that you're not getting any reflections from behind. Anyways, but that's the I think I have and I'm going to look for one. I think I have a more modern version of that that I'll show in a second. A lot of people are mentioning it here. So Jesse, and then Leland, and then Bill.
So if you want to do something simple and get pretty good eye contact, if you just position the camera right underneath a screen, I've got a Samsung 32-inch TV that it's a 4K TV that was only $250. In my camera, I got the geometry right so that it's just below the screen. And my eye contact is pretty close. It's not as good as the teleprompter, but that's certainly an easy way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Leland, and then Bill.
I came across a device just this year. It's called the Caddy Buddy. It's pretty impressive, honestly. It's basically using an iPad inside a teleprompter unit with a webcam or a DSLR camera, if you'd like, or even another iPhone as the recording unit. It has a lot of different attachments you can include in that, along with a case. Runs under $600 or under $200 for the base unit. So go take a look at that. I'll put caddybuddy.com with the full link in the chat.
That's great. Go ahead, Bill.
And that's exactly what I'm using. I bought a Caddy Buddy, and it's doing just fine. I mean, it's going to sit there. I wouldn't buy that if you were using the teleprompter to move around class to class and do a lot of physical activity. But if you've got a fixed source, it's really great. It's doing fine. Somebody mentioned the C920 or the Brio in there, and I bought a Brio and got it in about a week and a half ago, and it was confusing me because I couldn't. This doesn't have a 1/4-20. How am I going to mount it? Turns out they've moved to putting a physical little plug thing for their base into the 1/4-20. If you wrench that out, there's a 1/4-20 sitting there to be used. So don't get confused by the mounting options on the Brios.
Do you wrench it out, or is it threaded? That's kind of an important point.
It's just a little plastic plug that they have pushed into the 1/4-20 to mount that. The 1/4-20 is underneath it, but it's not obvious.
Okay.
All right. Let's see here. Next question here. Serena says, would love to review a suggested production equipment setup. That's a hard one because it's hard.
That's what we do all day.
Yeah. I mean, the hard part is that one of the things we're working on, again, for the new website, I'm hoping to put it up as some of the first articles, is, hey, in this price range, you can buy these things. In this price range, you can buy these things. The range for an educational unit can range from $700 or $800. I mean, even less, but in that kind of a couple $100 up to, 200,000, depends on how far you want to go. So you just have to decide. A lot of times it's figuring out how to back your way into a budget. So when you ask those questions, one of the things I'd recommend, if you want to even re-ask it, is say, how much I have $2,000 to spend. What would you buy? That's a much easier question for us to answer than a production pipeline, because now what I will say is that we're pretty happy from an audio perspective of using the Piles as a cost-effective audio selection. So this Pile headset here with the USB connector is $30, and we find that it is dramatically improving someone over what they had on their computer, not necessarily over what I have on my computer, but in general. That seems to be a good solution. I definitely think that for webcams, we're still the StreamCam, Brio, and the C920s, the Logitech. You can get those. They're a little bit more expensive right now on eBay, and you have to be a little bit more patient. It is amazing how fast they move. We saw 28 of them on. We track 920s. Because I'm buying so many of them on Amazon every day. I get up in the morning before I see you guys. I look at whether there's 920s available on Amazon, and I buy some. So because it's just easier than eBay. I can't figure out. I mean, eBay drives me absolutely bonkers. So there's lots of them on eBay that you can buy right now for $50 more than the retail price. When they pop up on Amazon, I usually buy them to have a couple in stock. There were 28 at 3:00 in the afternoon, like 3 days ago. And there were 0 like 2 hours later. I mean, that's how fast all of this stuff is kind of moving. I'm not the only one looking for those. I will say that the other thing is in Zoom, what I thought was really interesting, Hosmuk was on earlier a couple days ago, and we were able to pan and zoom, control his Brio from 2,000 or 8,000 miles away or 12,000 miles away or whatever. I was able to reframe him and move it around to get it just the way I wanted it remotely. So the Brio I find to be very interesting from a camera perspective. It's a little bit more expensive, but the 920s and again in the stream cams, if you have a USB-C, I think that those are still the best USB cameras that are made right now. And then ring lights, that's so if you're asking for a basic pipeline, I think that those are the most inexpensive ways, kind of into that pipeline. You're talking about $300, $400, $500, and you now have that. I think that again, when we rank, what we worry about is internet. Get rid of Wi-Fi. If you can get an Ethernet connection, it's going to improve it. Jeff made a great video about that using me when I was on Wi-Fi. So get rid of Wi-Fi. Make sure that you have up to at least 5 megs up. At least to go up. Then the next thing is worry about your audio. The Pile is $30. It's going to improve your audio. Then worry about your lighting. So some kind of ring light. You can also get something, shop lights and bounce them off of remember we were talking about this earlier. You can get something a really powerful shop light and bounce it off of a big board. And it'll do a lot of what you want it to do. You just want a large source. And then you can worry about the cameras, and then you can get into a lot of other things that we can make better. But that's the rank. Audio, if you're an educator, is the most important thing you can make better. And you'll hear me say that at least a couple times a day, because it is because the audio is what causes so much trouble. That's why if you've ever been on a conference call with people in conference rooms, you'll realize how important audio is and why conference rooms shouldn't exist. Serena also said, suggest a post-production workflow for using Final Cut 10. And all I'd say is that it's a really open question. So it's hard you might want to be more specific, because that can mean a lot of different things. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, people are going to be wanting to do simple editing, particularly teachers in classroom circumstances. So rather than going directly into Final Cut 10, I'd almost suggest you use iMovie, because it's with your system. And when you're learning iMovie, a lot of those things will translate if you want to move up to Final Cut 10 later on. On the PC side, I'm hearing a lot of good things in some of the seminars about a piece of software called BCut. On the PC side, it's very simple, but I've heard from teachers that I've talked to in other things that it's been working really well for them. So iMovie and BCut are the places I'd look.
And the thing that I would go back to, as a teacher, if you haven't done video before, I would become an expert at presentations. So that you can record. Now, I will admit that PowerPoint and slides is a disadvantage over Keynote. So Apple's Keynote is dramatically better than both of those. It's not like it's like 50% better. It's like 10 times better. It's why, until we were forced to, even for clients who would have competitive tools, if you went backstage, there was still Keynote, because it just works better from a video distribution perspective. So it's much more fluid and much easier to use, but you can still do a lot of it in PowerPoint and slides. As a teacher, doesn't mean put a bunch of text on it. You can do things where, like, for instance, I was talking about this earlier. There's some people that we've worked with that they'll have a slide every 3 or 4 seconds. They're just moving. They're just hitting the slides really fast, and they're really good at it. And they just go boom, 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 boom. It doesn't mean that you have a slide sitting up there for minutes. We want to use it as a way to generate content. So what you can do is create a slide deck. Keynote will record it for you, so you can have a slide deck and just go slide to slide to slide and talk, and then at the end of it, it just makes a QuickTime file. There's your. I do that a lot. So you can just output a QuickTime file from Keynote. I don't know whether other apps do that as much because I haven't tried, but you can definitely use a screen capture program to do it, so that you're basically screen capturing your presentation and just working through it. But really think about visuals. Every slide you should be able to understand in 5 seconds. If it's more than 5 seconds, if there's more to read than 5 seconds, your slide is too big. It's too much things. So create a new slide. Keep making it more, so that it keeps on pushing that information up. I would start there if I hadn't done video before. You can import stuff you shot with your phone. You can do a lot of those things. It's relatively easy. When you hit the ceiling, then you look at BCut and iMovie. When you hit that ceiling, then you go to Final Cut. When you hit that ceiling, you go to, you start adding motion or something else on top of that. One thing as a school system that I would think about is, if teachers are using Final Cut, or if you're a Mac-based one, is to think about building a bunch of templates. And we had a talk earlier about how the BBC does this, but build a bunch of templates for graphics and lower thirds and all kinds of other things in motion, export them out as plugins for Final Cut, and distribute them to your teachers. That takes all the work out of it. They can make a whole bunch of things that look really good and open up well and have a lot of other things. They don't have to know how to do it. So, and I think there's a huge opportunity for Simon to build a bunch of educational plugins for folks. But anyway, so that's something to, that's kind of what I would consider as on a fairly opened question. That's where I'd go with it. Bruce Francis said, "I am enjoying Connections by Burke, but would like Alex to explain more about why he calls it the greatest video in the history of the world. Not the greatest video in the history of the world, but the greatest model of education videos in the world." What I don't see anywhere else from education videos is the density of content that I see that was created there. Now, admittedly, he has budget, so he's moving all over the world. But this was built 40 years ago. 40 years ago. And we have to remember that in the 70s, it was the most popular PBS PBS release ever for PBS. So this was, it's not like it wasn't like an outlier back then either. What I can say is that as a child, I was completely enraptured by it. My kids, 40 years later, are completely enraptured by it. That is an incredible amount of span. He's in bell bottoms and all kinds of long hair and a really funny looking suit a lot of the time, and my kids were completely locked. They won't let their mother speak in the kitchen, which you can hear from where our TV is, because they couldn't keep up with it. And what we're seeing there, and it doesn't look like anything. It's not like a whole bunch of graphics. It's not a bunch of things, but there's an incredible amount of it takes a lot. And what was interesting is that there's a couple years ago, he was speaking for Harvard, and literally didn't have, I don't know if he had any examples. He might have had a couple slides. And I was like, holy smokes. I sat there and watched the whole hour of him just talking, and he was just weaving a story, and he's at the time, I think he's 82 years old, or now he's 82 years old. And there's something about, and I really want to see if we can get him on here. That's part of why I'm like, share it with your friends. Let's get a whole bunch of teachers. If we can get 1,000 teachers here, I think we might be able to get, I think if we got 1,000 teachers here on Saturday morning, we might be able to get James Burke to come talk to us about education theory and K-Web and his ideas behind that. But I think that what he was able to weave is a super interesting, compelling story that ties knowledge together. It's the way he thinks. When you look at his K-Web thing, is that all of these things are interconnected. Nothing's isolated. And the way I've always learned how to do things is because I'm thinking about something else. Like I'm connecting, I connect all kinds of, seemingly unrelated things helps me understand that thing. And he does that really well. I'm not teaching you math for math's sake. Like I didn't learn math because I wanted to learn math. Like I found math to be incredibly boring until I was trying to shoot, rockets. And then it became really interesting, and I wanted to build a railgun, and it became really interesting, and then really quickly for me, my interest in math went from I'm not interested in school to school isn't moving fast enough. And I'm now reading Feynman lectures on physics at 15 years old because what's happening in school is no longer enough data, right? So what we want to do is it's the context of what we're learning that becomes important, in that process. And what Burke is really good at is context, the context of what these things meant, how they were interconnected, and I think that it makes it super interesting. And I think that finding ways to do that for kids, and I had a back and forth with Alton Brown on Twitter because I got excited. I hadn't seen Connections for a couple of years. I put it back on. I remembered how great it was. And I posted something there, and it turned out that Alton Brown said, well, I was binging on Connections when I was designing Good Eats. So, so Good Eats he was binging on a lot of things. And Alton Brown is another person I'd love to bring in because that's my other, like, when I look at what I want to see education look like, I look at what he's doing, and I try to, because he makes cooking, even cooking boring things, interesting because you're understanding it, and he's not using a bunch of high tech. Now, I think we could incorporate a lot of high tech into both of what they're doing. That's why we have an hour every Saturday on Unreal Engine, is because I think that Unreal Engine as an education platform is going to be amazing. But I think that we need to look for models that don't look like classrooms, that look like video production. Because I think that again, as an educator, you're competing with these models. You're competing with kids watching this all day. And then when they're going 100 miles an hour and then they come back to the classroom and they're going 2 miles an hour, I think most of ADD, that what we call ADD, is just that school is boring. So we have to fix that, and it's, it's not moving fast enough. It's not that it was ever moving fast enough. I mean, I was bored when I was 6. So I, this is not something that is, this is not new. It's just that we have the technology to make it better now in a way that we've never had the accessibility of knowledge in a way, or the accessibility of building the content in the way that we do now. And now there's a strong reason to do it because we can't keep on doing what we were doing. Michael.
I just wanted to mention on that too. I remember Sarah Hill telling me about Boyd Hubbard and the Red Chair project. He's based in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, so that's worth having a look at as well.
Yep, I haven't seen it, but I'll definitely check it out. Ken Jones says, my teacher friends don't yet see the value of great AV. They don't see themselves as studs as studs do. Need a pointer of good,
Students.
better, best. Students do. Oh, okay, students do. Need pointer to good, better, best presentations to help them become believers. Number one is the best thing to do is to do it, yourself, and to, again, I tend to not spend a lot of time on folks that don't believe. Like you just take if people are really interested in it, then you support them and help them and figure it out and trade notes. And what we're hopefully doing here is A, talking about it for educators, and then B, the Discord we're starting to build a whole section, a whole grouping in Discord for education. So we're hoping that educators will join there. And then so the educators that are the early adopters, we're hoping to support you more and more so that you can be more successful. And a lot of times by example, driving people, that direction. Everyone wants to be good, and everyone can be self-conscious about being not so good if they're compared to something that's really good. Chris, go ahead.
Research on teaching has a long history of doing studies that are aimed at modeling the master teacher, finding the superstars like Burke is, and providing examples of wow teaching, with the assumption that if we show this to student teachers or in-service teachers, the scales will fall from their eyes and they'll start speaking like Mr. Burke. But I think that's a trap. I call it the inimitable model. In other words, we're impressed by these models, but we can't see ourselves actually pulling that off. I wasn't born that way, and so forth. So we dismiss those examples. I think what we need is a little bit better than you're already doing models. You know, incremental improvement. What's one thing I can do that will make me 10% more effective, or 9% less obnoxious, and then we'll move up from there.
And that's like my point of doing better with slides, PowerPoint, and Keynote. Is not what I would do necessarily, but in some of the things that I'm working on, I'm trying to do it all in Keynote. Some of the 1-minute things that I'm working on, I'm trying to do them all in Keynote, specifically to dog food the idea that you could make a great video without using anything else. But to your point, I completely agree with you, and that's why I didn't start that way. I was like, teachers should learn how to use After Effects, and they should learn how to do 3D and everything else. And I very quickly realized Keynote would be a huge improvement. Like watching my, Keynote videos that you just output, would definitely improve the experience dramatically. I definitely agree with you. Sky, and then Guy.
Well, it's Guy Cochran that got me into the Zoom because of education. So it's fun that he's.
Nope, you're breaking up, Sky. Nope. Wait, your connection is not. I don't know if you can hear us, Sky, but your connection is not. We can't hear you.
John.
He's on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, he's on horrible Wi-Fi, or even cell. So we're gonna let you go, Sky. You're not even moving in video right now. Yeah, we'll let you probably just watch for now. Anyways, Guy, go ahead.
I was going to say when I was teaching Final Cut, when I was teaching Final Cut and video production, I was teaching a lot of teachers, and I kept hearing this thing of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as we are in this kind of digital space, because one of the things that I would do is I would go around the room and, let everybody introduce themselves, tell us where they're from, and then purposefully through the presentation, I would call on them and rope them in based on what they had said that they do. If they said that they're a wedding videographer, I would be like, and John, in this example, would use this in the ceremony, and he would add this graphic like this, and you would see him stand up a little bit taller, and it's like being acknowledged. So I just want to get your thoughts on that kind of interactivity with the audience, but virtually, like how do you pull people back in?
Well, and I think that, and I'll let Chris jump into this as well, but I think that for me, I absolutely agree with you. So when I used to do when the Pixel Course started, I used to do 2 weekends that were the Pixel Core orientation, and it was a Friday evening, and then 2 12-hour days on the weekend, and then another 2 12-hour days the next weekend. And it would be this, what I found was it just kind of pushed everybody, like it got everybody kind of down there. And what we talked about was, we talked about visual effects, and we talked about video, and I broke down movies, and I broke down, how to do things. And we sent them out on little projects. And it was a very complicated, very intense 2 weekends that we did. And but one of the first 4 hours, because there would be 80 people would be in it, and for the first 4 hours, people just introduced themselves. And so what I did is I just went from person to person. What do you do? Why are you here? What's important to you? Why, what do you want to get out of this? And they would talk about it. Now, I had a whole bunch of things that I wanted to talk about in that 4 hours, and I would weave that stuff that I wanted to talk about into each person and make it and use their share as a context for some data that I wanted to give them. And the closer I could get to, and this is 20 years ago, so this is a long, but this is all in one room. But the whole idea is that the more you can drive it, you can have all the information. And I really learned that that was the way I like to do things. So even now when I do talks at NAB or I do talks in other places, I mostly want it to be a conversation. That's why office hours is my most natural form, is I don't want to talk for very long. I want to have, I find that when someone comes up with that question, then we're contextually having a conversation. And then the one thing I will say is that repeat, what makes this work in a lot of ways, that we do it every day. And then I know what I have a pretty good idea of what you are going to say, Guy. I mean, not always, I have the direction of like how it's going to impact that conversation and what Bill is going to say, or Chad or Colin, and so, and I try to use that as much as I can. And so I completely agree with you that the more you can pull that out of the audience, not only for the questions, but for the answers, the more engaging that process is. And the more this is a conversation. That's why I really think that flipping the classroom is so important, is that we want people to look at the data and then we want to talk about it. And again, we're not trying to give them the data during the discussion, during the classroom time. We're discussing it, as Chris talks about. We're sparking that fire. We're contextually getting people excited about it. We're covering all that stuff. And then they can go back and do more work in between, the sessions. And Chris, and then John.
I wanted to second what Guy says and you said, Alex, about how important it is to establish whatever relationships you can at the beginning. And it, as you suggested, it seems like we're wasting time. We're not really getting to the content that people signed up for, but it's not wasting time. It makes the time that you do interact amplified and memorable and connected. One little variation on the theme that I've had great success with is, instead of the leader interviewing or running the self-introductions, I pair people up to interview one another, be able to, in 6 words, introduce this new best friend whom you just met. And so all of a sudden you're starting to do the popcorn thing, where not only do I feel like I've been respected by the organizer, but now I've got somebody to my left and somebody to my right that I know a little bit more about, and who know a little bit more about me.
That's interesting.
Comment.
And the interesting thing there is that to your point, one of the things that I'm interested in and impatient for in Zoom in the webinars is specifically the being able to do breakout rooms. The Q&A app that we're using as a separate pipe right now would allow us to have the best of both worlds as early as next week. So where we can have, we could theoretically do breakout rooms in meetings rather than this. By August, I think that we could probably do that, where we could do what we're doing here, but we could break into smaller things and so on and so forth, but still have the Q&A and comments and have that all merged together. So
I love the way you get us to keep coming back.
Well, it's people just love conversation. I don't know. People here love conversation. People who don't come here don't love conversation because they don't keep coming back. So you do what you think it will make a difference, and then you see who sticks. John.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is how to get the feeling the room, and like Chris said, you really want to try to do something to get people engaged. And what I found in the Zoom rooms with a lot of faculty members I've been doing is they sort of treat it as a TV show. It starts at this hour and then they start presenting, and it puts the students in a passive mode. But I haven't been able to convince a lot of them to do some icebreakers, and there are some icebreakers you can do. But I found it's not hard for me to convince them to say, you really need to make sure everybody's audio is working. And Mickey started this, I think, at one point when we were doing our audio checks, rather than just saying things. We read poems, or somebody said, the question of the day is, and if you do that, every person said something, and that will make your class be more engaged just with that one simple activity. And it's not like some, icebreaker that they feel is a little funny. Everybody got to say something. They knew their audio worked. And then all at once, I'm interested in that. So the more things we can do to make the room more cozy, and you do it by starting an hour early. That warms us all up.
That is the intention. is if you get in early, we're all just sitting. Well, we're warming up twice, which is that we're warming up once for the in the original hour for the Q&A, and then we're warming up again for the second hour. So by the time we bring somebody else in and we're talking about a subject, we're going 100 miles an hour. It's not like, oh, everybody's coming into the room and getting their wits about them. Yeah, we're full on. And so that is definitely part of that intention of how that structure works. But one of the things we're also doing is trying to devolve the way people think about that. To your point of that, I'm going to talk for an hour. We talk to clients all the time, and I just say, I got that you have a bunch of slides. These are scientific folks, educators, government, and they're used to, I'm going to show a slide deck for the next 20 minutes. And they have 3 people they're going to be in a panel, but a panel means opening remarks will last for 40 minutes, with slides, right? And that's not a panel. And so what we try to get to is get a moderator, get a question asker, and then just start having a conversation, having the moderator ask the questions that the people want to have asked at the very beginning so they can talk to it, get rid of all those slides, and just have a conversation, but then start almost immediately incorporating questions from the audience. And as you start to do that, questions from the audience communicate to the audience that they're being heard, and it engages them to keep on asking more questions. And the why voting is so important is that when you vote, you become a stakeholder in that question. And it's like, it's basically question lottery. You've now bought a ticket. When you voted on it, you bought a ticket that we should cover that, and you're waiting for it, and it keeps your listening away from passive and inactive because you're waiting for that next thing.
So I'll give my secret though, the quick secret. When I was a professor and got the lousy 250 seat lecture class,
right,
I would seed certain students with questions, give them extra credit. So that meant when I asked a question, I didn't have to wait that 2 minutes for them to form it. 3 questions happened, and then it went. And people, my colleagues would come in and say, "How do you get the students asking the questions so quickly?" I said, "Well, actually, I seed them with about 3 questions, and they get extra credit for asking them." And then people would come up to me and say, I'm really not doing well at this. I'm a few points short. Could I have some questions to ask?
Right,
and it changed the chemistry of a 250 seat auditorium.
That's great. That's fantastic. Sky, real quick, we're going to start speeding up because we're running out of time.
John Iddleston, am I coming through? That's the first question.
You are.
Okay. John Iddleston, yesterday you pointed out the Arizona improv concept. I tried to go there. Is there just a link to a video? Because they wanted me to engage and involve and give my password and my mother's maiden name. So can you
But they're trying to make you part of the club.
I'd love to.
Working on. They'll be available, and as soon as the links of the individual ones are there.
Why did you think it was so cool?
Because we had 75 people doing improv, and as improv over Zoom, and the typical thing was with improv, some of them were just amazing, and others of them went down in flames. But we did it for about an hour, and so you learned improv. You do it, it works, or it doesn't work, and you move on.
Well,
that's great.
That's what I'm doing with Actors at Noon. Sorry, Leland.
Michael Krautwald. Michael Krautwald said, and we're going to move really fast now, because I realized I was 10 minutes off because we usually give you guys a 10-minute break before the next section. So, why is Keynote so much better? And what I would say is that there's just so many tools in it that automate making things flow. So the layout stuff is a lot faster. The quality of the keying and all the other little bits and pieces. There's so many pieces in there that are really designed around an easy layout and the animation and the transitions. All of those things look better, they feel better, and it's just a lot easier to get to those much faster than the other platforms. And I built them on all of them, but those are the things that I deal with. 10 seconds each because we're going to move really fast through the speed round. Bill and then Andrew, 10 seconds.
Apple's genius is putting a tremendous amount of effort into removing friction for the user of their products, and they've removed a ton of friction from those kind of programs.
Andrew?
This question keeps coming up over and over, and I wonder if you've seen, or maybe we should look for a good YouTube video where it explains why Keynote is better than other apps.
I don't know. We're going to talk about Keynote we'll show it more on Monday because we're going to do a whole hour on the second hour on Monday is just Keynote. Well, it's Keynote and presentations.
No, but
and
you know,
how we
sometimes
use
there's those, you know, they
Yeah.
compare all of them, and then there
Yeah.
might be a video out there that we can just put a link in and not
Yeah.
have to
Here,
rehash it.
it's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind revisiting questions. Whoops! I accidentally removed one. I apologize. I just killed one by accident. Grade 3 teacher Google Classroom or Google Sites for Classroom assignments and information. Go ahead, Emily. Relatively quickly.
Yeah, so when it comes to little kids, it depends on how much help they've had before you go to it. Google Classroom can be a little interesting to navigate as a third grader. If you've done it with them, then it's cool if you can make some videos for them to follow. It's really easy once they start using it. Google Sites is a little easier because they can just click and go to the thing they want to, but actually a hybrid of both is the best.
Great. Let's see here. Let me highlight a couple more of these. Doc said, I teach 5th grade and our district will be starting a new year with a hybrid model. A great way for kids to learn is by having them create content themselves, by learning a topic and teaching it to others through video. We've done this through Flipgrid and WeVideo on student Chromebooks. Is there one thing that you would want to get across to young students about video production and creation, and what would that be? It's just telling the story. You know, like really, is this required for the story, and where can you cut? You know, so editing, you know, cutting stuff out is probably more important than putting stuff in. And so really, how do you get down to the nub of it? I would strongly recommend having kids build videos that are no longer than 1 minute, kind of go into what I would call TikTok mode. Longer videos are A, more boring to watch, and B, they're easier to do in some ways. They're just long and drawn out. But how do you tell a whole story inside of 1 minute? And you can make it, I mean, again, TikTokers have figured out how to do it in 15 seconds. So, and the kids understand that model, but I would look at it really fast. Go ahead, Chris.
I've had luck advising kindergartners and graduate students on an approach which is to start with the conclusion. Tell people in your story how the story ends. And then if there's any time left, tell them how you got there. But start with the punchline. Often at conferences, for example, inexperienced graduate students run out of time before they get to their conclusions.
Right.
Because they didn't foreshadow them. So start with your closing line and then back up and show us how you got there.
Yeah, I've kind of resorted to that for the stuff that I'm designing for YouTube, is that I want to tell you everything you need to know in the first, if I make it longer than 60 seconds, the first 60 seconds is everything you need to know. If you only want, there's no introduction, it like comes into it going 100 miles an hour. Now, if you stay, I'm going to back up and unwind it for you and talk about it more, you know, but these are the things you need to know in 60 seconds. And then the next section is, if that wasn't enough and you're still interested, you're still here, I'm going to show you a bunch of other stuff that it might be interesting, so that people, you know, but to your point, I think that's how you engage them, as you get them, you know, tied into that. Bill, real quick.
If you want some simple stories that are executable, look back to Fables, Three Little Pigs, Little Jack Horner. You can do those things in a minute pretty simply, and they're public domain.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron asks, with so many schools in the U.S. resorting to home teaching, are there other alternatives to Zoom that are just as good? And I will say, as someone who uses all the platforms almost every day, there is no close second. Like, it is not, this is not, we're not in, you know, like I use all of them every day, no close second. You know, and I would not say that Zoom's perfect. Out of 10, I think I tweeted this out. Out of 10, I'd say it's a 4. So Zoom is about a 4 out of 10. But the next closest one is Meet, and I'd say that's about a 1 out of 10. And then Chime is the worst, it was negative 10 out of 10. You know, but almost everybody else goes into the negatives pretty quickly. The GoToMeetings, the WebExes, the, you know, all these other things. There's nothing, you know, Zoom has figured out enough of this that it is clearly better than everybody else. And there's not, it's the reason I'm doing it here. You know, like, it's not, you know, and again, I will tell you flat out, it's not perfect, but it's not, but it is far better than all the other options. John, and then Emily, pretty quick.
If you go to the Zoom site next week, I think it's Thursday and Friday, the Zoom education team will be doing primarily a K-12 report on Zoom. Definitely worth attending, and there'll be higher ed ones coming. You may see that number rise, Alex.
Excellent. Emily.
I agree completely with your justification of the systems. Like when ordering, Zoom is the best, but GMeet did just announce adding like raising hands and some other features that are bringing it up to Zoom. So my schools that are stuck, forced being used to use GMeet, there are some updates coming.
Yeah, but it'll take a long time for them to catch up. Any suggestions for teachers to watch, follow? Any suggestions for teachers to watch, follow for grades 2 through 5? Go ahead, Emily. Do you got something there? Nope.
Sorry, yeah, I put it in the chat. Christina Pinto from yesterday I mentioned, and the other woman she's working with. They just wrote a book. They also have templates, some free, and you can take the Google stuff and convert it over to Microsoft if you need to, if you're forced to use one system or the other. But it's a great place to start because she has specifically kindergarten through 3rd grade, I think, or 2nd grade, and a lot of different templates already built for you.
And I think we already did this one from Sky, so we're going to move that one. What is the easiest? Michael McDougall says, what is an easy-to-use app for creating visualizations of complex concepts? I'm looking for those cartoon explanations seen in many YouTube videos. And I'm going to come back and say Keynote. So Keynote is free. It is easy. If you're going to use you can use slides but I do very complex like explanations of things inside of Keynote where you have something pop up. And remember that, you can just go up to you can go up and it's a little more difficult now with Google. They've made it harder, but you just search for the images that you're looking for in Google, set your tool to large so you get all large photos, look for things that are over white as examples, copy the picture, literally just hit copy and then paste into Keynote or whatever you're doing. Use the auto alpha and it'll get rid of all that white and put it over top of white. And you can sit there and just start, cobbling together things from all over the web, and you can build very complex pieces. The thing that I'm most excited about that hasn't happened yet that I'm hoping to, that I think is going to revolutionize things. And one of the reasons that I'm talking about Keynote so much is that I do think that inevitably Apple is going to add USDZ to Keynote. And when they do that, there will be no close second, because now you can drop 3D objects into 3D interactive objects that you can rotate around. You'll be able to drop into Keynote. And I don't have any information about that other than watching WWDC and watching them talk about it. But and imagine being able to have an iPad and scan any object that you have with the LiDAR on the iPad, and then take that object and drop it into Keynote and rotate it around. It's going to leave everything else in the dust. And every school system that doesn't have the Apple platform is going to really be sorry that they went down that path.
Briefly on why USDZ is better than OBJ, which is a standard that's been around for years, because to this day I don't understand why that's a thing. Because
it's going to be supported as a media layer at the same level as stills and video inside of the app, and you're going to be able to interact with it with all the lighting information, all the texture information, and even animation information. So and so it's way more data that is all packaged into one piece that you'll be able to drop in. You can literally have animations, interactions, all kinds of stuff built into it. OBJ is the base of that, and you're absolutely right that it's been around for a long time. But it is the USDZ is going to let you do a lot more, and it's going to look a lot better, and it's going to be a lot. There's a lot of other things that you'll be able to do with it that you can't do with OBJ, and you can convert OBJ to USDZ. There's a converter already, the reality converter that Apple makes that's free, that will convert OBJs to USDZ. But you can add so much more data than what OBJs carry because they're an old format. No one thought of that when they made it 25 years ago. Bill?
For thought organization, I have for decades used a program called OmniGraffle. It's really started out as kind of an org chart builder, but it's really flexible, it's really intuitive, and you can stack up ideas and link them together in there brilliantly.
The more complex stuff that I do is all in OmniGraffle, which then I bring into Keynote. So, but my diagrams and so on and so forth, I have to admit, I wish Apple would just buy Group and take OmniGraph, will take all the stuff out of it and put it in the Keynote. And because it does a bunch of things. One of the things that OmniGraph does really well is it lets you connect a whole bunch of objects together with arrows. So then as you move it around, they all just kind of move together. So you can kind of rearrange things, and it's a lot, you're not constantly moving where your arrows were and so on and so forth. And we'll talk about a little bit of what you can do in Keynote in that area on Monday. Rich Gilpin said, for speakers on a stage, how do you keep your camera at eye level? You put them on risers. So you put, the cameras oftentimes are at the same level as the stage. So you'll have these big risers that you put up on the cameras that go over top of everybody else. The advantage of the stage is that it brings it up, and then you have the cameras up high as well. And to add one piece of that is that you separate your operator from the camera tripod usually by 2 or 3 inches. That way the operator's movement doesn't shake the camera. So usually you have 2 3x3 foot risers that are in the back for each camera, and that's how you keep it at eye level. Unless you have your hand up really emphatically, I'm gonna keep moving really fast just to kind of close these. I'm pretty committed to us answering all of them here. Perry Miller asks, what's the name of the connector that you're using for the Pile mic? I posted it in Discord. There is no name. It's like it literally is like a part number. It is a AA50311 sound card adapter. It's straight out of China. I'm surprised I had anything in English. But it's got, we'll post in Discord again and make sure that people have that. But it's relatively inexpensive and it works. I'm sure there's other ones that work too. It's just the one that I know works because I bought it. A. Mitchell said, or this is Aaron Graham said, I'm a grade 3 teacher. Is Google Classroom or Google Sites better for classroom assignments? How about platforms such as Blackboard? Does anyone have any? I don't have any strong opinions in this area.
Didn't Emily just answer this one?
I think so, but not exactly. So we'll keep on coming back to that. I think that I know that my kids are using Classroom, but I don't know enough about it that.
Only the Blackboard's been around for 25 years. It started out as a bunch of Perl scripts in 1995 or 96. So it's well established, and it's grown quite a bit since then. And I think it has a built-in video platform now. I haven't used it since then, though.
I will say that I when things have been around for a long time, I usually don't view that as a good thing, because mostly it's old thinking and old infrastructure.
So there's the legacy support issue, but there's also the establishment and
sure.
If it's well maintained, then you've got a lot of robust features.
WebEx has been around for a long time, but then some folks at WebEx were like, "I'm done with this," and they went out and created Zoom, and now Zoom is Zoom.
It's a catch-22. It's just a matter of whether they executed correctly or not.
Yeah, you just have to be willing. I think that companies have to be willing to throw everything away to get what they need. By no means perfect, but the Q&A system that we're experimenting with this is the 4th time it's been rewritten with no code that is connected to the past. Emily, and then Chad, real quickly. We're gonna go a little over.
I was just gonna say that the Blackboard issue is it's so hard and cumbersome when on the school side, like the teacher view, whereas Google Classroom is drag and drop, Google Sites is drag and drop. So that low level tech availability for the reach for the teacher, it's easier, but it has limitations, but everything does. It's no matter what you choose, if you're a Microsoft school, Google school, or Blackboard or Canvas or whatever, it always has a limitation somewhere that you end up having to either work around or just put up with.
Yeah. Chad, real quick.
Blackboard's SCORM conformant, so that's handy to be able to exchange content. You have a lot of different sources of content. I don't think Classroom is SCORM conformant. Some of those other tools are, though, Canvas, Moodle, things like that. So if you need to be able to have access to lots of content, that's one thing.
Michael asks, what is the $700 kit that you send out? For us, it's been, now we're probably going to move actually to the Pile because it'll save us a bunch of money, but in the past it's been a C920, a light that we usually budget $150 to $200 for. We change that a lot. The C920, the light, an auto earpiece so that they have a one ear, so that they don't have any echo. And then the mic, the light, the earpiece, the camera. That's basically it. And so it all adds up with shipping to about $700 when it, by changing the type of mic, we think we can get it down to under 500. So, but those are kind of like a real quick, like, I'm just going to put this together and it's going to work and send it out. And we used to have boxes of them that we just would export
What's the
out.
description of that auto? Is it AUDO, AUIDO? The auto.
It's an OTTO. This is what it looks like. And it is it's $45 or $50 or 60. I don't know, somewhere in that range. And you can get it on a lot of different things. It's all in one. It's a little headpiece. It's just got an 1/8" jack in, but OTTO. If you do OTTO IFB, you'll find it.
Is it how would one evaluate that versus any other standard headphone, earbud type headphone?
It's just convenient. If I'm going to send something out, it's going to be convenient that it clips onto the back and it rolls up and it's one ear. And
But in terms of audio quality, it's about similar.
No, actually, the audio quality is lower.
Really?
It's just that it just sticks in your ear. It stays in your ear. It's easy to it's convenient. It's low profile. You don't see it. I mean, those are the things that we're looking at. But you definitely can get headphones that will sound better. It's just that you see them and they don't look. Even if you see this one, it looks like, oh, I've seen that on TV before. So it's less of an impact. I'm running a little late. We're going to run behind, and so we're going to have to cut into this a little bit. We've been behind for a while. So what we're going to do is we are going to take a 10-minute break because otherwise, everyone needs a 10-minute break right now. We've all been here. Some of us have been here for 3 hours. So we're going to take a quick break. I think Leland will give us a little bit of a room there to do that. Yeah, thanks, Leland. And so we'll make it 8 minutes so that we start right at 9:10. So 8 minutes from now, we're going to get started with Leland. So if you're interested in talking about vMix, which is going to be amazing, we're installing it. I'll tell you the story when we get back. So 9:10, we'll get started again. All right, thanks. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves, of course.
Here. Hey, TJ, I'm curious.
Chad, nice to see you on the panel today. It's not often we get you out here, so awesome.
Good to see you, sir. I'm looking forward to your.
And Sky, I'll send you some information
hoping
on
for a little bit of help, I'm
improv.
In Discord,
Is that the best place to do it?
SCHY at clappingtreesmedia.com.
That may be easier in Discord, but I'll get it to you.
Copy that. Thank you, sir. I'm curious.
Go ahead, Sky.
TJ, how are you configuring your screen? Because now I've got this new chat interface, but I'm still got the old Zoom chat and questionnaires because as we're transitioning here, and then I've got my laptop here that I've got so many screens open here, and
Yeah, so do I actually. And right now I've got 2 monitors going. So I've actually I've got you know what, I'll do a screenshot. It is kind of a mess. I have the Zoom window kind of really small right now.
With the group, with the whole gallery?
Yeah, I pretty much only look at the gallery view.
Yeah, me too.
Because I know what people look like when they're talking. So, and then I've got the new chat.
Michael Tucker always gives a great face when he talks.
And I have the new chat kind of small lower right, the old chat up above it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's my.
Hey Sky, I could fix it for you. You could go and get one of those UB LG monitors that are put 4 HDMI's in, and fix it that way. Another one for the budget.
I want to do Chris Finley, his Lego head. That's where I'm going.
Yeah. So they go for about $600 here for the 32-inch LG monitor.
Oh yeah. Oh.
It'd be less for you, but yeah, we're about 1.5 at the moment.
The dollars.
Yeah. It sucks, doesn't it, mate?
Yeah. There's what I wanted to.
There he goes, Mr. Green Screen.
Yes, but it came back.
It must be the virus, mate. Must be a virus.
Well, I'm in Melbourne, so we are locked down. But in the background, I've actually swapped my vMix machine and my laptop back to NDI 3.8, and it seems stable now.
But you've got something on that chroma that's showing up on the top, on your top right.
The sort of, hang on, I'm just, there should
Yeah,
be a
just
bit
there.
of green there and a bit of blue over here.
Yeah,
hang on
yeah.
Hang on 1 second. What's the easiest way I can do this?
Because that's not your lateral light for the room.
No. That's a.
Oh.
That's not me.
Ouch. That's Leland.
Yeah, Leland,
okay,
you
in
might
background.
want to review your audio before
No, I'm
you
still
start
hearing
talking
it.
here.
That's not me.
Robert Green, maybe.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can you take me down to attendee?
That's
There we go,
Mickey,
Michael.
around.
That's the pure background.
I don't know
That's
who has
a
privileges to
rendered
do.
image.
Mickey, maybe?
Yeah, I want to give out an update and a warning. Possible recall. Courtney is saying that this adapter is not working with his pile. This is the Bengu one we've been talking about, and that's the one that I own. So until I verify it, don't buy one.
Has yours stopped working with the pile, or
No, I haven't tried it with the pile yet. I was using it with another headset, and it worked great.
I
So-
ordered a couple.
This
of
one
different
also
ones.
does.
Go ahead.
What's that one?
I can't even read it.
Chat, yeah. Okay, the Z sound, or whatever.
I ordered a couple of them today. I'll report back and we'll see what actually works. But
yeah, my MPOW has one, the same thing, and it has the same kind of adapter, regular
Now, did you-
TRRS. So, but if we've been telling people to buy this one that I have and it's wrong, we have a major problem. So, try it, Colin. So,
Oh no, I don't have that one.
There's a
but
certain
I have a couple others that we'll try, or I will have a couple others.
There's always a certain percentage that will fail, so we can't always rule out the possibility of failing equipment. We'll just have to send them back and see if they can replace one with a adequately operating unit.
Well, like I say, I use this one when I
25%
was
of them
mobile.
don't work.
Yeah.
Then
I mean,
we're-
right. So there's either the QA issue, or it in fact doesn't provide the quiescent power the thing needs, or whatever. But
Well, and my pile works. I just have to run it through my H6 and give it phantom power. The USB device that I was holding up doesn't give it anything to be able to get sound through the mic.
Okay, but
Right,
the word from
whereas
Colin
the
is you don't need power.
Well, no, you need some small amount of quiescent power, and it's sort of nebulous what that
Okay.
requirement really is, and which devices will actually deliver it.
What
For
we're
example,
gonna need to-
my Yamaha mixer specifically states that it delivers 5 volts through the 1/8" jack, which is not something I'd heard of before.
Okay,
So-
now you have steered us wrong, Colin.
How so?
Well, because we were assuming you can plug this thing into any 1/8" audio jack.
Well, that's
So-
the thing. We've been able to do that in 99% of the cases. We've plugged
Well,
in
and Alex says it works with the one that he's using, so we need to
Right,
know
well, that's the thing.
specifically which one
We've
it is.
plugged it into
Yeah.
every 1/8" sound card, we've been able to get our hands on, and it seems to work okay.
And I sound better than I ever have. So thanks, Colin.
Well, I'm glad it's working for you. Remind me, you have the Ugreen adapter? Was that
He's
what
got
you
that
called
other one
it?
he was just showing.
Yeah, we need to specifically tell people to use the one that Alex has, maybe.
Well, the one that
Verify
Alex
works
has
on that.
seems
I
to
haven't
work,
seen that one online
and
before.
he just lucked out. He ordered that one at random, so.
Hold on, Chad. Leave it there.
Yeah. Well,
I'm gonna
we'll have to
try and
verify
get a
which ones
screen
work
cap
then.
on it.
Oh,
Alright.
okay.
Yes,
Stan says
and
it's the
that's the point. There is going to be some percentage that works, some percentage
got
that
it, Chad.
fail, and there's going to be some percentage where it's just a QA issue, and it'll be
Leland,
tough to
can you do a
discern
test
which
real
it is.
quick?
Yes, sir.
Can you do a test?
Yes, sir. I will. Give me.
We'll put a
sound
definitive
check.
word
We're,
up,
Mickey,
Colin.
Mike,
am I on? Check. hold on a
Leland, we're
minute,
getting
Mike.
that
Check 1, 2, check.
clicking, that NDI-ish
Okay,
clicking.
that's what I expected. I was just
Yep.
trying to know because I went to NDI real quick.
Yeah, we're getting that clicking again.
Okay, let's try this instead. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Little hot.
Yeah, that's so much better, but
vastly
hot,
better
yes.
though. Hot, but better.
I don't know why I'm so hot though. That's the thing that's really confused me with the way things are going on Zoom lately. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Test.
Well,
1,
remember,
2.
NDI
check
will
1,
knock you
2.
down 20
Check,
dB,
check.
right?
I'm not using NDI now. I'm just going straight through
Sorry,
the
I
mic,
just stomped
so
on
it's
your
kind
mic
of
test.
odd.
Go ahead.
It's all right. Jump. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Check check. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Check check. Test 1 2. Coming to you from my home studio along the Shiawassee River. Check 1 2. Wow, I'm way down. Mike, even coming through? Oh, that's
Yeah,
why.
you're-
Never mind. Wrong
No,
chain.
that's almost
Let me
perfect.
fix something here. Hold on. No, I'm on the wrong chain though. Hold on. Let's do this. Check
Yeah, I
1
think
2. Check check.
split the difference. Went
All right.
down too much.
Check 1 2. Check check. Test test. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. All right, cool. I'll go -5.
Hey, Alex, we just discussed that at least Courtney says there's a problem with the Bengu adapter not working with his pile. So we may have to really refine which brands work and which ones don't. So.
And the trick, so there's the brand issue, and then there's the QA issue. So we got to figure out.
We've in our kits we've resorted to just sending 2. We're
Well,
like at
no,
$15 each.
so that works fine for the pile, which is $10. But if you're spending $15 or $20 or more on an adapter, you don't want to be sending 2.
Well, you mean they were having trouble with the one
Right.
that I had?
Right,
Well,
so no.
specifically the USB adapter, whatever one you have works. We know that because you're using it. But the report from Courtney is that the Bengu one doesn't, and we will verify that.
But that's why I was super specific about this one in the, I'll put the link
Right.
in.
You,
It was
you lucked out, it seems. You selected the right one at random, and that's great.
It's funny. I did the right one because it had a dial, and I thought it was going to be a volume dial.
But no, Mike
Bengu has a dial too.
Got one with a dial, and maybe not. So
yeah, and I am going to probably grab a bunch of them.
yeah,
And,
I did the same thing. I'll be reporting back in the next couple of days.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so we'll keep on testing them and seeing what shows up there. I do have to do as Leland starts. I got to tell you the story of how we're getting all our vMix demos done because we're trying to figure out how to do 10 of these vMix things, and we want to install the demos so that we can see if we can get it all working. And we'll be inviting some of you to come into vMix calls sometime soon as we test the whole pipeline and everything else. But you can only install 4 from a given location. It's not you have to have a different email for each one, but it looks at your IP and then it won't let you do more than 4, which is just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So anyway, it's just the goofiest thing. So now what we do is
Even if you have multiple licenses.
Well, the idea is we're not buying them yet because we're trying to test it all. I want to spend $700 a unit to figure out how they all interact with each other. And so I need, and right now I'm looking at basically building up 18 of these, right? So, across different systems. And so I can't do it all in one place. So we're taking 4.
That is horrible.
So it's the funny, because we're trying to build this huge system and do a huge purchase, like $12,000 purchase or whatever from vMix. But we can't get the system working because we can't install them all. So we installed 4 at the location. We installed 4 at my house, and crew is taking the servers home. We got them all set up. These Dell servers that we bought are all set up, and all they got to do is take them home, plug them into the internet, one at a time, and install vMix, and then bring them back into the office. We're just like,
could you do it as virtual machines? And each virtual machine would have its own IP, right?
I'm sure they're using the external IP to.
Yeah, the external IP
Yeah,
would still
it's
be
doing
the
the
same.
external IP is the issue. So,
Yeah,
so it's just the funniest. Now we have, and one thing I am looking at is that our new internet service or whatever has a whole ton of IPs that we bought with it. So I might be able to just route them all through different ones and do it all there. We're just waiting for that install to come in. So, but it's just the funniest limit. I always wonder, who thought that was going to be the thing? There's always, there's some programmer with some goofy idea about it, and they made some, weird decision. But 4 was just a weird, why wasn't it 5 or 6, or why did they do that at
Alex,
all?
they've got major problems with vMix at the moment with bootleg copies, and that's probably why they do that.
Yeah, they're all over right now.
Sure.
You'd be surprised how many posts you see in Facebook saying, "Hey, how do I get around this? It just started all of a sudden not working anymore." Well, you've tried to hack it and it crashes when you try.
Liked it.
Well,
User groups are full of them.
The thing that we'll get into the meat of this in a second, but what's interesting is that in 3D, the world, some of the apps like Electric Image was extremely good at keeping anybody from hacking them. And then other ones like 3D Studio and Maya didn't work at it at all. Like they made almost no effort to protect it, because what they knew was as soon as someone starts making money, they don't want to get sued. You're one angry employee away from a $250,000, fine in the United States. And so, and they flat out, I talked to folks in the company and they were just like, yeah, we're not worried about that. Because what they were worried about is the number of users available to work for the folks that are paying for it. So what they were worried about is just market saturation. And it's the reason 3D Studio and Maya in the general market got so much bigger than everyone else was actually the pirated versions. It's the reason Photoshop took over was the pirated versions. It had not, what people don't understand is that pirated versions are the engine. Now they finally moved to subscriptions that made it all, they've been able to lower the cost, but the pirated versions and the easily transferred versions, when you're charging that much money, are the engine to make sure that you have you have a larger user base, you have a larger, you look at Apple, with Final Cut, the reason it's taking over is because it's inexpensive and you can copy it to a lot of machines, and you never pay an update. And in the current world, there's lots of people using Premiere. But I work with a lot of influencers. The only influencers that use Premiere are the ones that are hoping to get a job in Hollywood. Everybody else is using Final Cut. Like, it's burning through the entire pipeline. I mean, there's not going to be, the next generation is all going to be something else because it's easily copyable. It's not. You can install it on lots of things. So when I see people doing all this crazy stuff to stop copyrights, I just know I've been in this business for 30 years and I've watched what happens with the highly pirated software. They're the ones that win. They're, and so, and the ones that tighten down are generally the ones that get left behind. Unless you make it really inexpensive. Like a lot of us are moving to. Like, I make every person in the company justify Photoshop. I'm just going to give you Affinity Photo, and if you have to tell me what you need in Photoshop for me to pay a subscription for it. Because it's, and same thing with After Effects. You have to justify After Effects.
Well, on the vMix, Alex, because I have a birthday party to get to, and I hate to cut you off. I really wanted to touch on that because it's important when it comes to vMix and the licensing that they are expecting from us.
And then we'll move on. Sorry.
Huge amounts of access to the software.
Yep.
It makes perfect sense. So.
All right. So here we go. Stuart Fairweather says, Stuart, do you want to ask the question that you had? Do you remember it?
Feel free, Stuart.
I can ask it.
But I had to unmute the mic.
Okay, go ahead.
NDI is now working because I changed back to 3.8 from 4.5. Yeah. So I was using the WebRTC webpage that was linked the last couple of days and trying to see if my system would work with WebRTC for doing vMix call. And it failed on a couple of points with getting through for access for the stream. Is there any guide for VPN setup for getting that pass through to make sure that call will work at this end?
That's a tough call. I see a lot of stuff in the forums about VPNs, and basically the only thing they're finding as a solution right now is to shut them down. So I can't really tell you whether there's a safe solution to come through somebody's VPN, like an educator that's locked out in a environmental system that's built for a community like a university or something like that. I really haven't dug deep enough again in that regard. So we'll have to look into VPNs. Obviously, it's a thing that I'm going to be using overseas in Southeast Asia and Pakistan very soon for some of the people over there in the English-speaking colleges that want to work with me. So I will be digging into all of these things over the summer as we move ahead. It's just very time-consuming. So we'll see what we can work into that.
Go ahead, Stuart.
If anybody else like Colin has any thoughts, I don't think he's here right now, but if anyone like Chad, you probably know more about VPNs and vMix than I do, honestly, because you work a little bit on those systems. So do you have any input on that?
I've only used the one VPN that I've been messing with in the cloud. It is, what is it? 1 tier 0, 0 tier 1. Yeah, 0 tier 1.
Okay.
And that's what's made it possible for me to use my MIDI controllers on my cloud instance. The only thing that's been able to make that work. So it's really keeping my workload.
So that's going the other way. I think what we're looking at is, Stuart, you're trying to get through to the vMix call system without having a lockout, basically, of callers being able to access it, correct? Through the VPN?
I wasn't even getting to that point. I was trying to get through just to get WebRTC to work through a
just in the test
modem and what have you. Yeah, it failed
Chad?
on.
And
I've seen people having a lot of trouble getting iPhones through, and I'm still stuck on vMix Call. You're saying WebRTC, I'm saying vMix Call. The beta's been getting through on iPhones and iDevices better than regular has, from what I'm hearing from others. And it looks like I'm a little hot.
That's not what he's looking at then. So,
and this is definitely a challenge with WebRTC. So WebRTC has a hard time navigating complex topologies. So VPN is a very complex topology, but firewalls and all kinds of other things that are there. It's one of the reasons that we're going to be using vMix for stuff, but we have other tools that are in the back end to make sure that we could switch to Zoom, or we could switch to Skype, or for a given computer or a given person, because we think that that's going to continue to be a problem for WebRTC unless Zoom is a hybrid of WebRTC. It's something that is built. It has some history in WebRTC, but it does a lot of stuff on top of it to correct for those things.
And were you able to get tests
let
on
me just give a
WebRTC.org
quick
to work that Leland gave out?
That's
earlier?
what I'm doing right now. I'm going to open this up. This is what Stuart's actually referring to as the test that he did over at WebRTC.org. If you're connected to anything, Stuart, originally prior to this test, like I'm doing right now, you may find some of these things fail because an item might be in use by another system process. That would be my first guess. Like my camera just failed, even though we know it's working. The network here, obviously, you're looking at probably the relay connectivity that you're having an issue with, or the host connectivity. Which one were you recognizing as an error in the system?
I think it was both.
Okay, and that's likely if you're up here trying to run it while you're connected to other systems. So just turn everything off and rerun this test and see if you get those same results. And we'll see what happens there.
I'll do that when I'm not actually using Zoom and vMix for other things.
Probably a good idea. All right, so let me move ahead with what I wanted to touch on today. We got a couple questions left. Alex,
let me ask a couple questions, and then we'll have you jump in. Yep, perfect. So Greg asked, new vMix machine build. I don't foresee any live camera events for the rest of the year, so I'm optimizing for vMix Call and other remote participant integration. Will I see any performance difference between a 2080 Ti and a 2080 Super in this case? Any other system optimizations for remote callers? Nope. Okay.
No, don't waste your money.
Greg, I'm going to just try to go through the questions here real quickly, and then we'll go to your presentation here. Have my first show on Monday with vMix Call Zoom integration. The webinar is on Zoom and being pushed through vMix to an audience on YouTube and Facebook. My plan is to pin speakers on multiple machines and send to vMix using NDI remote desktop capture for adding graphics. Any advice or suggestions?
Take a deep breath before you start. I think you seem to have put it together pretty well as to how your setup is going to function. So I think you're one step ahead of the game in that regard. Knowing the process flow and knowing what you're getting into before you push go live is the biggest step and hurdle a lot of people ignore, because a lot of people think we just push a couple buttons and things go live. If you're prepared for your broadcast and you come out here and do your broadcast based on what you laid out in storyboard, you shouldn't have any problem. So I don't see any real issues with what you're doing here. Just best of luck. Break a leg.
Mickey?
Yeah, I don't know if Leland would agree, but I would suggest don't use NDI for your audio transport.
I would agree with that currently, but we're working that out.
Stuart?
One little thing, which actually goes back to something you said a couple of days ago about splitting your loads for what's doing the encoding and what's doing the switching. I often use the output from a GPU through an Adamus Shogun that I'm using to record, and then feed into a little HDMI to IP box. In these, you can set the destination the same way you would in vMix to the different servers, but that means that the box that's designed to do it is sending to YouTube or sending to Facebook. So it's a little bit more reliable or a little bit more fault tolerant.
Yep.
The big thing is one other thing I'd like to add, Alex, and I'll let you take it from there. Make sure when you're firing this machine, turn off your virus scanning, turn off your Windows update processing, turn off any other apps that are floating around on your computer that you don't need running in the background before you go live, because those are really probably the biggest hurdles that will crash a machine at any moment. When something pops up on your notification slot and says you need to do this, the computer might go and do something. And in that regard, you might be live broadcast in the middle of 4 guests, and that's the resource you needed at that time. You don't want that to happen.
The other thing to think about, once you start doing multiple computers, the other way to think about this, the way we do it, is actually to reverse that flow. It depends on how many people you have. If you have way too many, it may not work. But what we do is we do point-to-points with each person, whether it's Skype, and we're playing with Zoom based on some of John Idelson's input. If you have a business connection and you have just one person talking to another person, you're guaranteed a 720p signal out of Zoom. What we do is then grab those videos, put them back into the switch, and then feed that back to as a return signal. But we're actually doing the audio mix on our own, sending mix minuses back to to the participants. And so doing a lot of that work outside of Zoom. And the reason for that is that we have a lot more control over the audio. When they come in, we can, we're now in a point-to-point with each person. So it's a much more broadcast approach. So if you already have those multiple computers that you're capturing with, you may want to think about that workflow. I don't know in a network situation with NDI how well that would work. We're using baseband, SDI to do that. And our audio is also on USB pre's and analog because we don't even want to use Dante in that environment. Mickey?
Yeah, just something that popped up in my head to answer Greg's question on any suggestions. Just keep in mind that Zoom will keep some on-screen OSD elements, like the live on YouTube, gallery view, exit full screen. All those things will remain in the frame. So you might want to frame a little wider than you would, and then punch in vMix if possible.
We are at the end
to
of the
elaborate on a case like that. I'll usually just make it an exact full screen and put it into one monitor, and then hit F11, and you'll lose all that extra stuff that's on the screen. So take a look at that the next time you want to do a screen scrape. That F11 removes most of the browser features that'll show up in any kind of app. So in a case like this, if you're on that screen, if it's in the browser mode, of course, depends on how you use Zoom. You can use it either as the app or in browser mode. And in this case, if you want to do a screen scrape browser mode, it'll work that way.
And I know that in Teams, if you wait 5 seconds, that interface will eventually dissolve away. But until somebody touches the monitor, and that's when you slap the client's hand, it's embarrassing.
Well, and again, that theoretically, I actually think that from a third party, we're going to be experimenting with, I think that the Zoom external connection could be the best one because you have a whole management set of tools on one side and you have a clean aperture on the other, on the second monitor, which I think is going to be an interesting possibility. Anyway, Leland, go ahead. What do you got to show us today?
Yeah, let's rock a little bit out here today. And what I'm going to cover today basically is how to get a stream out to social networks. And a lot of people do it several different ways, and there are several different ways to do it. So I'm going to first head out to my Facebook page. You're going to see my browser here in a second. And let me close all these silly conversations. I thought I did already. I'm out on my profile, and what I'd probably want to do is broadcast to a page. And the reason I say this out on Facebook is because pages have much more when it comes to content, accessibility, and manipulation when it's primarily in video format. So I run most of my broadcasts off of a page known as Leland Best Live. And in this case, a lot of times I just bring vMix into the fold and I'll fire up a live feed on Facebook. And this is using the WebRTC API client through Facebook. You're not actually sending an RTMP signal per se, because I'm going to use my camera versus the stream key. All right, this is one way in. And the reason I want to show this to people is because there's a little glitch in the system. When you go to assign a camera, you may not see the actual choices available to you. All you really need to do is do a retry on this, and it will say it's unable to find the camera, but then you'll see in the setup that the cameras are identified and they'll start to show up. So just a second ago, I couldn't get to these, but once I did the retry, I was able to come in here, something I've notified them of, but it doesn't seem to make a difference just yet. we use the WebRTC virtual camera component in most cases. I'm sorry, you're seeing the Zoom window there. So I'm sending out my external one signal into Facebook as a WebRTC signal through the browser per se. And it's going to show up here on the main screen. And I should, in most cases, if I'm sending an RTMP signal, I would see the video bit rates, I would see the audio bit rates. But when you're using a virtual camera, Facebook can't determine that information because it's being sent through the browser. So we basically have to run on the fly with this. But there's a few things about this system that are recent. And because vMix is tied to Facebook, we don't necessarily have to use this method anymore. We can go right to the software. All right. And the other way that would be done is the RTMP signal. So we're going to use the stream key this time. And you can capture my stream key if you want. I don't care. I just reset it when I'm done here. It's no big deal. But these are the two items, obviously, that we're going to need when we go to stream to Facebook. And I probably already have them installed in the Facebook setup on vMix. So we're just going to head over to the stream settings. Now at the bottom of the menu bar, you will see the gear to bring up the streaming setup, which is basically the API connection, but it can be used both ways. So we create separate feeds for 3 different channels if you'd like. So I could literally multi-stream with vMix with no other software like Restream or Caster.io and come out to 3 feeds, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, however I want to broadcast to Periscope. And I just have to set them on each of these feeds. So if we want to go custom, we can, or we can say none. So a lot of times what you'll find errors will pop up is people will have these tabs filled in with all kinds of different setups. And they think it's only on one and they go to fire it and start all. And it tries to start one of the second or third feeds on there. And it'll give you an error because maybe you didn't change the stream key. So something to look for. In order to create a setup, you're going to want to add one first. So I basically just say, all right, I'm going to do a test. So I've got a test with 3 non-existent streams. In this case, I want to go to Facebook first. So I'm just going to connect to Facebook. I have to actually log into Facebook to get the API to connect properly. And once it's completed, vMix will tell you can go back to the other screen and go from there. So I'm just going to head back to vMix real quick. And in doing so, that window, let me get my window back. Okay, I must have it up somewhere else. Oh, it's popping up. Oh, there it is. It was on a different stream. So it's going to connect to your profile on Facebook. Now you can change this to another profile or change the image if you need to, but that's not too important. Gives you access to every page and group that you have out there on Facebook. If you're a producer, now obviously me, I'm a producer on several different pages and several different groups. So I have access to several channels. In my case, I'm just going to go to Leland Best Live. I'm going to stream to a new stream, but I can create one ahead of time as well if I wanted to and go to that stream later. I have up to 7 days, or I believe it's 10 days actually now, that you can pre-schedule a stream and come back to it later. But in this case, we can just create a test, label for the stream. We can bring in the description for that stream. And then if we want it to be public, private, or just my friends, or just me, which in this case, I'm just going to do a private stream for myself. I can schedule that stream. Keep in mind, if you do a Facebook broadcast, you must schedule your broadcast 11 minutes ahead of schedule. Why they did that is kind of goofy, but if you were to set up your stream and send it out to your feed at, let's say your broadcast was at noon and you sent it at 11:55, it's not going to make it go live until 12:06. So you have to keep that in mind. That's just the way Facebook functions. Always be there ahead of schedule and schedule it before your show, because if you try to get in there at 5 minutes to, it's going to fire late. There's nothing you can do about it. So we create the stream, and in this case, you may see here, privacy can only be set to public for streams on Facebook pages. Okay, and that's more or less an issue that has come up only recently, and we're just going to go public and see what we get here. I'm going to dig into why we can't do a private stream on a public page, but I guess that's just something Facebook has delineated as a no-no. So we can go from there. Now, this is going to go ahead and fire that stream on Facebook. So we can open it, but we're not going to see the content because it doesn't really exist yet. The post hasn't been created, just the stream access to the streaming server. And you're not even going to see video here on this page. So you're probably wondering, well, why isn't my stream going anywhere? And why can't I see it? Well, you won't unless you actually create some other content. So what I like to do is either go live immediately from Facebook and just do a one-off broadcast. So if I start one, then that feed is going to go live. You're going to see yellow, orange, then red. Red is a solid connection, not a bad thing. This means you have a good connection to Facebook. And if I head back over to my Facebook page, I'm going to go over to Leland Best Live here again. And what you're going to find is that I should have a stream running. So here's the live stream, but I never created the post. It just went ahead and started a live broadcast of video to the page. Now there's no real content here except for the title and the description that I gave it in vMix. The preferred method, this isn't the preferred method. So I'm going to stop this and take you to the way we typically do a stream. We did this last night for a Democratic congressman out of Texas who passed away last week, a good friend of ours, father. And we streamed a live dedication that, well, it was a performance that was done the day before. We streamed the video that was edited and produced as a live broadcast on Facebook last night. And it went really well. But the way we did that was we came out here and we actually did a custom stream into Facebook. And it's always the same URL, depending on where you're going into Facebook, doesn't matter. It's always that 443 port on the RTMP Live API, Facebook.com. And then you have to gather your stream key, of course, from elsewhere. So let's head back over to where we were a minute ago. This stream should now be dead. So if I think I stopped it, did I not? Yes, I stopped that stream. So that stream no longer exists. It's just gone. And there should be a video that's there that I can go back and follow up on. So here's the video. It was saved. But as you can see, it's just a very generic type publication. What we like to do in cases of Facebook videos is we'll go live and we'll schedule the post ahead of time. And the reason we do that is to make sure that people are going to get notifications that our broadcast is coming up. So we're going to do it on a page. We can share this out to both our timelines and other groups and actually cross-post this if we'd like to other pages that we have access to. So you can create a post on a single stream that could literally get cross-posted to 25, 30, 40, 50 locations on Facebook if you're tied to enough of those accounts from the people who own them. So keep that in mind. You can make as many of those pages to get your word out as you need to. The live title, obviously, again, the test, the description are all here. The cross-posting, let's say I want to throw it on one of my other, let's take it over to Best Conception. So I'll get two feeds out at once. The audience settings, of course, again, public. Aging is a big thing nowadays. Child content delivered to kids. We've got to really be careful. And then any restricted locations, if you wanted it to not go to a certain country or other access point, then you can designate that here. We're using the key. So let's grab the right key. And I'm going to go put that over into vMix real quick. So we've got the custom feed. I'll probably have to highlight this whole thing. Drop in the Facebook key. Now, there are some advanced things you can do if you have to log into an account on a custom RTMP feed, like some CDNs require you would have your username and password. You would add that here and the type of agent that's being used. Check your audio settings. Make sure your feed going out and the quality is at the rate you want it at, whether it's 720p video at 2.5 megabits per second with 128 kilobits per second video or audio, or any of the other 100 choices that you have here. Once you have those, make sure you save it. Okay, if you don't save it, you just leave this box, you're going to lose all that stuff you just did. I typically recommend using the standard MPEG output for this and a persistent stream key. This gives you a single stream key that you will use for every broadcast. If you turn this off and use this, the next time you come out, this stream key is going to change. It's going to be a different stream key. So if you've saved it in your software and you try to stream to Facebook and this isn't checked, you're going to get an error trying to stream to your previous stream key. There won't be a key there for you to connect to. For those who are gamers, you can obviously add the game, and they're looking to add the tickets and events by creating new events. I have not played with this feature yet. I've never been a fan of events because it used to broadcast into the description tab on the event, and nobody could ever find it. So we tend to recommend just broadcasting to pages or groups for that reason. Paired encoders are also available on Facebook. So if you have a hardware device that you want to pair up, like a high vision encoder or any of the other coders, I believe Alex's box may also function in that regard. Is that a agnostic type box, Alex, or is yours primarily Amazon only?
No, it's agnostic.
Yeah, I use the
then that
Clearcaster
should
with
work
that
as
one.
well. Yeah, okay. So you just simply have to add that paired encoder data on there if you want to go that route. Now your
Right,
stream, obviously,
and paired encoder is a
Yeah, go ahead.
Clearcaster, right? I mean, that's the paired encoder is a Clearcaster.
Yeah, that's how I bring in the Clearcasters right there.
Yeah, that's you set that up,
Okay.
and then it's like basically what it does. As soon as you pair it, you no longer deal with the encoder at all. So when you say go live on
Yes.
YouTube,
Yeah,
it
once
will
you use that.
it'll start it up. It's it's pretty
Absolutely.
And
Now, the backup stream, you can use that in a high profile event, but it's not a true backup like rollover stream that it's just going to take over the stream for you, but it is there as a backup recorded type feature set. And they would provide a separate link that would pop up, I believe, if the feed drops. I haven't run into it.
No, it will actually. I mean, the backup
for you?
the backup stream will actually cut over to the backup stream. So
It is full rollover here. Okay,
Yeah, it's a
okay, I wasn't
rollover,
certain.
and it depends on how you send that in. So you can split it from an individual, but what we do is, of course, have two encoders that are going to one into the primary and one to the backup. And so, that way, if one encoder fails or its connection, what we'll do is literally have a diverse. We're in a building, two different service providers, diverse connections to the internet, and then going in. So if someone cuts a line or AT&T goes down or whatever, it'll just pop over. And if your encoders are node locked, are they're locked, output locked, you won't even see it on the user perspective. Yep.
Hey,
All right.
Leland,
Well, that's convenient.
with regards to
Yes,
the
go ahead.
stream key on YouTube, is that functionality of having a persistent stream key available on YouTube? Or do you have to get a new one every
That's
time?
given. YouTube gives you a persistent stream key unless you change the check mark over on YouTube Studio that asks for a new stream key or a random key at each broadcast. So your default is to give you the perpetual stream key. The option on YouTube is to not get that. So kind of the opposite of what Facebook is. This is not set by default. This persistent stream key is never set by default. You have to add it in. And
Okay, I'm going
on
to have to
YouTube,
ask
it's
somebody
a
more,
given. It's incidental.
more deeper questions on that one.
Well, I could.
We'll
No,
talk.
that's basically it. It used to be the other way around, where you can flush the YouTube stream key anytime you want and create a new one in the YouTube Studio. But you already have a perpetual stream key on YouTube. As long as you save that key and don't refresh it, it will always be the same. You don't ever have to change it.
We'll talk.
Okay, let me get these guys out chats out of here. All right, let me just move ahead for a bit. You may want to unpublish the video, but if you want to share it on a website, they do provide the embed code. I just would take a look here and make sure that the embed code settings that you're getting from YouTube or from Facebook are appropriate. You can definitely set the resolutions here on the broadcast. 1080 is available in Facebook, but we've run into issues with certain accounts still not having access to that. As of the end of 2019, most people should. So you're going to want to stream a feed out to Facebook to see whether it's registering as a 1080 feed or not before you get going on this, just so you know what to scale to your website page. You can unpublish the video after it ends so that other people can't see it. If it was a premiere or something that you wanted exclusive content relating, this can keep other people from getting to it after the fact. And then, of course, your viewers could rewind if they want or turn on the auto-generated captions. And as to how comments come into the feed, whether they're people that follow you, they come at a slower rate at 10 seconds per comment, where it limits the amount of flushing or the amount of spamming that's going on. And any restricted folks that may not even have access to Facebook over the last couple of weeks can be kept out of the stream comments. So let's head back over here real quick to vMix and the setting, of course, for the stream. And now if I start this stream out, we're going to be sending an RTMP feed out to Facebook. And now we should start to see the connecting live video. And in this case, since we're using RTMP, we will see the video bitrate, the resolution, the frame speed, and the audio bit rates and what type of audio is coming in. So that gives you that opportunity to see this before we go live. Your stream health is also available here so that you can check the metrics and see exactly what's going on. If there is an event that takes place in there, you will see it. The graphics feature obviously is something that's just been added recently to Facebook. You can get into some fancy image preparation if you want, but the polling is something we don't use that often, but it brings up actual pop-ups on mobile devices in the comment section so that they can answer these questions with the touch of a button. Questions are a new thing that have been added to Facebook as well. And they're starting to get a little more helpful when it comes to Live Producer. I personally know some of the team over there. I worked with Vidpresso prior to their acquisition from into Facebook. So I know Randy, I know Hassan Salahuddin, and a few of the others that are developing this program. And I would be happy to reach out if there's things in here that people would like to see. and we can get you linked into some of the groups that are out there working on Facebook together. So that's really about the gist of how to get on a stream. And YouTube's very similar to the same thing. The big thing we wanted people to see is that there are some certain steps that have to be taken. Now, let's go back to that feed, because this is the important part of what I wanted you to see. Now that we have a stream in here, we've scheduled a broadcast, let's say. So let's say I want to schedule this. I do want to make sure that when I schedule the live video, it's going to come in the way I want it seen. So I don't want necessarily title, test, description. I want to fill all this stuff in. I want to share it to these other locations. I can change the graphic. So it's going to default to the graphic that's given to you on your page or wherever you're broadcasting to. But if I wanted to add whatever image I want, I can. And then the get reminder is the huge thing here. This is where people are going to be able to go see this post that you created a week before the broadcast, click on the get reminder button, and that way they will get notified 3 minutes prior to the broadcast when the feed's going to fire, and then they can come over and watch the feed fire. And that's where you have to kind of do your due diligence. Once your feed is ready to go live, it's going to go live on its own if it's been scheduled. You're just there to be there when the stream starts. Or if you feel like things want to kick off a little early, maybe you want to do a 5-minute pre-call and sit down and chit chat with people before your actual show starts, go ahead and go live. And that way you're ahead of schedule, you're already on the scene, and then you can just start your broadcast initiation like Alex does when we fire the feed live on YouTube or something of that nature. So that's about it. And then you can transfer all of your data. The status of the stream will be available here. So let's make sure, oh, it's not showing me the status. Oh, that's the wrong feed. Okay, let me go back to one. So if I'm on this feed and I want to see the status of this feed, this is a second-by-second rundown of everything that's taking place as far as frames and packet loss, the size of the files that are being dumped in those packets, the time it's at on the list. So you're going to see a 1 second tick on the time ticker, and then the bit rate that's sending out and the speed that's being received. I don't think you can see the speed on here. I guess you can't. It's not showing the speed very well. So that's about it. And then the log files will come in text format on the documents under vMix streaming under program data. So if you ever want to go back and check the logs of broadcasts that you've done in the past through the streaming service, you can go back here and get it. And then keep in mind, if you want a duplicate stream to be going out to another location, you can even fire it midstream. So if you wanted to suddenly say, I'm going to head out to Twitch, you could log into Twitch. Or if I wanted to head out to another Facebook stream even, or Lightcast, or Mixer, or Periscope, as long as you have one stream going, you can fire another and get them all running at once if you'd like, and set the bit rates appropriately if you have limited bandwidth. And that should cover you.
Does that affect your bandwidth? I mean, the multiple streams, or is it?
Yes.
So you got to have
every stream you create. Yes, every stream you create, Sky, is going to have a bit rate that you've set, whether it's 2,500 kilobits per second, or you're looking at maybe 4,000 or 6,000 or 8,000 like Alex uses in some of his high-end productions.
Sure.
Yes, you're going to severely limit your bandwidth capability. So I usually recommend about 1.5 meg to 2.5 megabits per second for typical 1080 streams to Facebook, or go 720. There's really no reason not to try 720 on Facebook and see if you like it or not. It's good quality video for handheld devices and things of that nature. So if you're low on bandwidth, go with the lower resolutions and lower.
Well, again, we've got the standard Comcast coming out of our facility on Sunday mornings, and I'm trying to figure out what am I doing, 720, or can I go 1080? Obviously, I'd love to, but obviously if it's choking the system, I'm only doing one stream to one location at this point, but you're saying if I go out to if I go out to Facebook or another distribution outlet, I need to make sure my pipe is fatter and fatter?
Yeah, you're going to double your bandwidth for each stream, so it's going to be an exponential increase as you go. So
the other method is to use something like Restream or AWS. Yeah. So you send one stream out of your facility, get it into the cloud.
That's correct.
And then split it out. And the basic math this is really rough math.
Yes, please.
But the basic math is 3 bits for every megapixel. Or 3 bits. So basically, if you've got 2 megapixel, so 1920 by 1080 is 2 megapixel, multiply that by 3. That's what I consider every resolution. That's the kind of bandwidth that I'm trying to get as a minimum, is 3 times that megapixel. So you know, 720p is whatever, it's 2 or whatever, 3, you know, or not 2, it's 1 point something or other.
1.5, I think.
It's
Yeah.
1, so then that's like 3 megs and 6 megs, and as you calculate those are kind of minimum, you know, MVPs for that bit rate. Then I want twice as much bandwidth at the location as that bit rate, assuming that I'm protected, you know, which means that I'm on a different VLAN, that I'm not sharing that bandwidth with anybody else. Leland, thank you so much. I know you have a birthday party to go to. Thank you.
Yes, I
that was
do.
amazing. A good conversation. We don't
You're
want to
welcome,
hang you
everyone.
here too
Thanks for
long. We're
being
going to give everybody their break. Steve Bays is on deck. He's got a new T-shirt, which knows. So we'll probably open the conversation there. We'll go from there. But we're gonna realign ourselves. Leland, I really appreciate you sharing the vMix love with us. Hopefully we'll be able to keep
Quite all
doing it.
right. It's a pleasure being here and providing this information that I've been gathering for the last 5 or 6 years to everybody. So I will see you in the next broadcast, folks.
We give
Take
you
care
an
and have a
official
good weekend.
dispensation to eat as much cake as you want.
Yeah. This
I love
burns.
ya.
It turns out
Appreciate it,
that speaking for an hour burns 1,000 calories. So just take that into your calculation there. Mickey, you can go ahead and close the stream. I want to thank everybody on YouTube for watching. There is a link there in the description that you can join Zoom if you'd like. But we're going to go close it for the second half of the long day. Bye, guys.